Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast, partnered with Concussion Pro 1, the world's first dedicated concussion supplement. I'm your host, as always, Newsome, with my co-host John, and tonight we're going to be breaking down the UFC 25th anniversary event, UFC Fight Night 139 in Denver, Colorado. How are you doing tonight, John?
How you doing, mate? I'm very good, thank you. Looking forward to the 25th anniversary show. There's going to be some entertaining fights on here, so looking forward to breaking them down.
For sure, I agree. I think it's a great card as well. John and I have been talking lately about how to give you listeners a little more than just breakdowns. We know that some of you are here just to get the full breakdowns on every fight and insights and tips on your bets and everything. So that side of things won't change. But what we are going to start doing at the end of the breakdowns is a hot topics portion where we'll talk about some of the key points, factors and question marks regarding the fight card too. So for those that have got no interest in the chat, you guys can just sign off after the breakdowns. But for those that might be killing a bit of time at home or work or whatever, then you have some free-flowing content and takes to listen to as well. Sound good, John?
It sounds good to me, mate.
Awesome. So just before we start, I'd just like to remind you all that the Premium Bets membership options from Newsome MMA are available and on the Newsome MMA website. You have the options of a standard bronze, silver and gold membership, and these memberships provide cheaper prices per fight card to those that commit to slightly longer terms, opposed to purchasing my picks individually per week. You can find all of these membership options at newsomemma.co.uk/premium-bets. That's newsomemma.co.uk/premium-bets. So without further ado, let's break down UFC Denver from bottom to top. And your first fight of the evening, we've got a short notice fight actually with Mark De La Rosa versus Joby Sanchez. It was initially supposed to be De La Rosa versus Jordan Espinosa. Espinosa unfortunately pulled out. I think it was some point last week. So Joby Sanchez has stepped in. John, who have you got in this one?
Yeah, I like this. I like this fight to start off with. I think it can be. It's got the potential to be an entertaining fight. Joby Sanchez is pretty wild in his style. We've seen that in his fight against JP Buys in the Dana White Contender Series fight last year. That was just for as long as it lasted, a round and a half. It was just crazy scrambles. Sanchez and Buys just switching positions over and over again. Buys eventually second round enforced his dominance. Sanchez enforced his dominance, took Buys down. Got into the mountain and got the ground and pound finish. His UFC debut against Roberto Sanchez didn't quite go according to plan though. He got tied up against the fence early on, and Sanchez took his back fairly easily, locked on the rear naked choke pretty early in the first round. So, but yeah, I like the looks of De La Rosa in this fight. I really like the look of him in his last fight against Garcia. He got the win in the second round, rear naked choke. He's dangerous on the ground. When he attacks, he attacks in flurries. He does like to throw those flurries when his opponent's against the cage, which I don't know if he'll be able to do so much with Sanchez, because Sanchez has got that forward pressure style. Sure. So I'm not sure how much he'll be able to do that against Sanchez. But ultimately, I do think he'll be able to get him down. And like I said before, Sanchez he's always involved in these crazy scrambles, and De La Rosa is pretty dangerous on the ground, as we saw against Garcia. He's also got hands because he knocked Garcia down in the build up to that finish in his last fight. And when you look at his professional record, he's only got one defeat against Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott's a very dangerous guy. We know that. So I'm favouring De La Rosa in this one. I could either see possibly a late submission, but I could see it going the distance as well. I can see it just being a fight of crazy scrambles, and I think De La Rosa will do enough to get the win in this one.
Yeah, I think it's a great fight as well, and part of me is a little bit disappointed because I was looking forward to seeing the De La Rosa and Espinosa fight.
Yeah.
If you've never seen Espinosa fight, I'm sure you can. If you haven't taped him this time around, you'll have an option to tape him further down the line, because I'm sure he'll get that UFC fight, and that was going to be a really, really exciting fight. I'm not disappointed with Joby Sanchez stepping in though. I think the UFC have actually done a really good job putting another fun and another well-rounded fighter in Espinosa's place, and I think that's what we're going to get in this fight. I think it is going to be exciting. It is going to be almost like you've got the fast forward button pressed on your TV. But yeah, Mark De La Rosa, like you've already mentioned, he's a very well-rounded guy. His wrestling solid, his jiu-jitsu solid, scrambling and advancing positions on the mat is also really good as well. And like you said, against Elias Garcia, the cousin, I think, of the Pettis brothers, I think it was.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Garcia had some good stand-up, and De La Rosa hung with him. He was landing some nice shots inside the pocket, moving in and out of distance really nicely. So I think Mark De La Rosa's game is really well rounded. I think he's more slightly at home when he's on the mat, opposed to on the feet. But like I say, I think he can hang with a lot of guys in the UFC. And then Joby Sanchez on the other hand, another really, really good grappler. I was excited before his last fight against Roberto Sanchez, because Roberto Sanchez was also a great grappler with good takedowns, and I actually thought that fight was going to go on a lot longer than what he did. I thought there were going to be some crazy scrambles. Roberto Sanchez just stepped up though that night, and I'm a big fan of Roberto Sanchez anyway, but yeah, he stepped up that night, and he took control of the situation and submitted Joby Sanchez in round one.
If I remember rightly, when they were tied up against the cage, Joby Sanchez dropped down for the Kimura, if I remember rightly, which was left him in a bit vulnerable, which is when Roberto Sanchez took his back and then locked on the choke. So
yeah, for sure.
He'll probably look back on that and think, why the hell did I do that? But yeah, if he hadn't have made that mistake, don't know where it could have gone. So I thought the same as you. I thought he was going to play it a lot longer than it did. I thought I thought that would be similar to how this fight. I see this fight playing out as well.
Yeah, and this fight could play out that way, especially if it does hit the floor, which I'd imagine it would at some point. Now,
yeah.
I don't know who's going to engage in that, who's going to be the first one to try and get their opponent down to the mat, because I think that's where both of their games are strongest. And we might end up seeing a scenario where both fighters respect their opponent's ground game a little bit too much, and we end up seeing a kickboxing fight, which I would then favour Mark De La Rosa. But I think I favour Mark De La Rosa wherever this fight goes. I think he's going to get the win. I think if it stays on the feet, I'm not sure the knockout will be there, even though he does pack a bit of a punch for the weight, Mark De La Rosa. But yeah. I would be more inclined to say if it stays on the feet, it might go to a decision. But ultimately, I just do see this fight hitting the mat at some point, even if it's just a case of one of them lands a hard punch inside the pocket and drops his opponent, and then dives on him. Then we might see a bit of scrambling once the guy's recovered from the mat. So just in one way or another, I do see this fight hitting the mat, and because of that, I'm going Mark De La Rosa to win via submission. And then in the next fight of the night, we've got another really interesting fight, and one that I've been really split on as well, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts, John. We've got Joseph Morales versus Eric Shelton. So who have you got?
Yeah, again, like you say, another really interesting fight. Just going off topic slightly, flyweight clash. Obviously, Demetrius Johnson, the news broke that he's been traded with Ben Askren now. There's all this talk of Henry Cejudo going up and fighting TJ Dillashaw at 135 pounds. So just hoping that the future of the flyweight division isn't in doubt, because there are some entertaining guys there. I know the division does come in for some criticism sometimes, and there's already been talk I've seen on social media that the UFC are planning on scrapping the division and whatnot. But yeah, just thought I'd get that in there.
I mean, the issue
there are some good guys.
The issue is with that is, and this is the reason I think that the UFC won't scrap the flyweight division. And if the UFC scrap that division, they have to be sure, because it will not be something that's then overturned and then they'll bring it back again. If they scrap it, they've got to be sure, because that'll be it then. There'll be no going back. And there's a lot of fighters that at flyweight I just don't think would benefit that at all, and having to move up. One of them being Jared Brooks, who's naturally a strawweight anyway. He doesn't put any weight to make flyweight. So just obviously the digression. But no, I don't think the flyweight division is going to be scrapped. I'd be very surprised if it did.
Yeah, so going back to the fight, Eric Shelton, I think, really needs to win here. He's lost 4 out of his last 5. 3 out of his last 4. He's lost before that was against Tim Elliott back in the Ultimate Fighter. But yeah, losing 3 of his last 4. He has fought some tough competition though since since making it to the UFC. I mean, Pantoja in his UFC debut lost a split decision. Jared Brooks, he lost a split decision. Then his last fight against Alex Perez, again he lost via decision. In that fight, I think in that fight he did just fade a little. Perez took him down a couple of times in the first round, and he was better on the feet. And I think Shelton just lost a bit of that pop in his strikes, and he did just fade a little. And yeah, the fight just seemed to get away from him. I do like the look of Joseph Morales from what I've seen. Team Alpha Male guy, they're always going to be solid at these lower weight classes. I was really impressed with him in his UFC debut against man we just spoke about, Roberto Sanchez. Picked up the rear naked choke. He's looking at his record. He's got a number of chokes on his record, rear naked chokes, guillotine chokes, and that's really what Team Alpha Male are known for. They're really dangerous in those scenarios. They're really dangerous with the guillotines, and it's that their wrestling's always going to be on point as well. And for what I've seen of Morales, I do like the look of him. Obviously, he lost his last fight to Figueiredo, but he's a top of the division kind of guy, unbeaten. So there's no shame in losing that fight. But I do like Morales for this one. I think he's going to take Shelton down, similar to Shelton's last fight against Perez, and it's hard to beat Shelton. It's hard to finish. So I do think this will go the distance. But I see it being a frustrating night for him. I can see Morales just taking him down, not holding him down for the entirety of the round. Shelton, he's pretty good at getting back to his feet most of the occasions, but I think he'll just play it similar to Shelton's previous few fights, where it just slips away from him on the judges' scorecards.
Yeah, I like both guys, both fighters. They're both really entertaining to watch, and they've both got a really good skill set as well. Joseph Morales obviously coming off the he got found on the Dana White's looking for a fight, which should be returning at some point. By the way, I was speaking to Din Thomas in Hamburg when I was over in Germany for UFC Hamburg, and he said they were recording a new episode. So look out for that. They're really good. If you've never watched the Looking for a Fight series, you should really watch it.
They're really good show, really fun, aren't they? Yeah.
But digressing again, he's improved so much. He looked great on that show anyway, but then he's come into the UFC. His first fight was Roberto Sanchez, which I've just mentioned previously. A guy that I'm a big fan of. I think he's a really good fighter. He's got a really good skill set, and Morales did a really good job against Sanchez. He stuffed the initial takedowns. He stayed vertical. He stayed on his feet. He put Sanchez down with a punch, and then followed up with some strikes, and then eventually Sanchez gave his back. He took his back and did what he's supposed to do. And then he got a really good fight in his next fight against Dariush and Figueiredo. Like you mentioned, he's a legit talent. He's going to go places in the UFC. He's solid everywhere, and he fell short against him quite drastically. He was getting taken down, and he was getting pieced up on the feet and getting hit with some hard shots. Ended up getting finished in the second round. So I don't think you can put too much stock into that. Shelton, on the other hand, a guy that I really like the look of him during TUF. He had a good fight against Tim Elliott in TUF as well. That really could have gone either way. I was hearing some people saying that they thought Shelton had won that fight. I'm still a little bit reserved on that decision, but still, Tim Elliott's a really good fighter as well. So going to close fights with him really speaks volumes. But I also think this is a trend with Shelton. He fights close, and what I always mean when I say a fighter fights close is he always fights to the level of his opponent, whether his opponent is better or worse than him. The only one slight exception was maybe Alex Perez. I think Alex Perez did dominate him, but you look at Janelle Lauser, he did well against him, but I expected Shelton to look a little better than what he did, even though it was a good performance. Jared Brooks, I think Jared Brooks is in my opinion, a lot better than Eric Shelton. That fight was close. Again, some people were saying Shelton won that fight. Pantoja, again, I think that Pantoja's a lot better than Shelton, but again, he fought close. He went to a split decision, and I just feel like this is a trend with Eric Shelton. So I think whatever fight is in, you can almost expect it to be close, and the chance of being a split decision is great as well. But I am going to pick him in this fight, and the reason why I'm going to pick Eric Shelton to win is Joseph Morales is a nightmare to himself, and what I mean by that is his ground game and his grappling, scrambles and submission game is about as legit as you can get for a guy with his experience and at 24 years old. Now, what he doesn't do is use his wrestling. He doesn't always look for the takedown. He doesn't try and force his fighter down to the mat. How he normally finishes fights on the mat is either gets taken down himself, sweeps or reverses into advantageous positions on the mat, and then works from there. Or like we saw in the Roberto Sanchez fight, he'll drop his opponent with a shot and then jump on him, and that's how he gets to the mat. He doesn't forcefully look towards his wrestling and to force the fight to the mat. Now, if he does that here against Shelton, I think he can have a lot of success if he gets Shelton down. The other thing to mention with Shelton here is I think he's been training at ATT for this camp. He's also been working a lot with Jussier Formiga, so that'll help this style for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think Morales could do really well, but he's got to force the takedown, and I just don't think he will. And from there, I think Shelton will be the better striker. He'll be the quicker striker, the crisper striker. And like I say, he's got good scrambles and stuff himself. We've seen that against Tim Elliott. So should Morales force a takedown, Shelton might have enough to get out of those bad positions. But ultimately, I've got Shelton to win this. I don't think it's going to be a stoppage, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. Then in the next fight of the night, could be a quick breakdown. And it could be a quick fight. We've got Davi Ramos versus John Gunther. So, John, who have you got?
This one's for me a complete mismatch. I was quite surprised, to be honest, that the UFC signed John Gunther after his stint on The Ultimate Fighter. We know how that went. I think he lost his first fight to Joe Giannetti in the first few seconds, if I remember rightly, but the first 20 seconds got choked unconscious, and then he lost his next fight as well. So I was quite shocked when they did actually sign him up, and he competed against Alan Zuniga, another guy off The Ultimate Fighter. But to be honest, Zuniga, I'm not very particularly impressed with his skill set either. So I'm going to keep this pretty short and sweet. I think Davi Ramos will win this one. I think he'll win quite comfortably. He's a dangerous guy. He's beat 4 out of his last 5 opponents. He's defeated via 3 out of his last 5 opponents. He's defeated via rear naked choke. He's a dangerous guy when he hits the mat. And he's just all round. He's just a better fighter for me. I think Ramos will hurt him. Gunther's got that wild style. He just wants to brawl. He'll come in with looping punches, no real technique behind it, and then try and press you against the octagon and octagon wall and try and take you down and just try and grind you. But I don't think he'll be able to do that to Ramos. I don't think he'll be able to grind him down, bully him like that. I think Ramos is too technical. I can see him hurting him on the feet. I can see him taking him down and eventually getting a submission.
Yeah, I agree. I think Davi Ramos is going to win as well. And some of these fights in the UFC, as a whole, I think matchmaking's really good in the UFC. Just let me say that. I do think that we get we're treated to some really, really good fights because of the matchmaking. But then you'll get fights like this that just make zero sense.
Makes
no sense whatsoever because, yes, Gunther won in his last fight against UFC against Zuniga. Wasn't a great performance. Zuniga, no disrespect, wasn't a great opponent. Then you've got Davi Ramos that, he's on a 2-fight win streak. The last one, Nick Hein, which I think was an impressive win with how he got it done in the first round. And it's almost like, well, I don't know. I can't even tell you what it's almost like. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I think Davi Ramos wins the fight wherever it goes. How long it goes, it's just he's just got an advantage over Gunther in every area. You know, then you can talk about puncher's chance, but then how much has that puncher's chance has Gunther actually got against Ramos? I'm not sure, man. It's just a really strange one. From a stylistic point of view, Gunther likes to move forward, like you said, be in the face of his opponent, be grindy, dirty, ugly, get it to the mat if he can. If he does that against Ramos, he'll get submitted. I think if he starts coming forward aggressively against Ramos, I think Ramos will land a shot and knock him out. So yeah, it's tough to see how Gunther wins this one, and I don't think he does. I think Ramos, I'm going opposite to you. I think he's going to knock him out on the feet. I think Gunther's going to come in. I don't think it's going to be early though. I think it could be a little bit scrappy to start with, and then I think once Gunther starts to feel a bit more comfortable and starts to let his strikes go a bit, I think that's when he's going to leave openings. I think Ramos will find an opening, and I think he'll knock him out. Then in the next fight of the night, we've got a very short notice fight in Devonte Smith versus Julian Erosa. So who have you got in this one, John?
Like you say, the short notice fight. We've got Juicy J, Julian Erosa. We've seen him in and around the UFC. He fought previously. He was on the Ultimate Fighter season 22, the Conor McGregor and Uriah Faber series, and he looked quite good in that. I was pretty impressed with him. I thought he did well in his fights against Mehdi Baghdad. I thought he looked really good then, but then he came up against some people's GOAT, Artem Lobov, losing eventually. But then he did have went 1-1 in the UFC proper before he was cut, and then what I like about him is he's just fought non-stop since then. I mean, he's fought about, if I just take a quick look, it's about 8 or 9 times since he did get cut from the UFC back in 2016. So in a couple of years, he's had a lot of fights. Obviously, he fought against Paddy Pimblett in Cage Warriors, a fight that I actually thought that Julian Erosa won.
A lot of people say that as well.
Yeah, that was the infamous fight where Paddy Pimblett was sick during his post-fight interview as well, because they went 5 hard 5-minute rounds as well. But yeah, he's pretty well rounded. He's got decent wrestling, he's got decent takedowns. His striking's not too bad. But I have to say, I do really like the looks of Devonte Smith from what I've seen of him. He's got a long reach for the weight class. He's got a really nice, crisp jab. He really fires that jab out, and then that sets up either the really low calf kick that he likes to use, or then that straight right. Quite funny though, looking through his record earlier. The one blemish on his record is to our man John Gunther that we've just spoke about.
Pick up John Gunther.
So as I say, though, MMA maths doesn't work. So I'm not taking too much notice of that. He's won 4 fights in a row since then. Obviously, again coming in off Dana White's Contender Series, defeating Joseph Lowry. That was a brutal knock. That was the Travis Brown-esque elbows when Lowry went for the takedown against the cage, and Devonte Smith just hammered him with elbows and eventually got the stoppage win. Ref jumped in pretty quickly on that one. But yeah, I really like the look of Smith. I like his striking. He's quite evasive. Like I say, I like his jab. He's really quick. His striking's really, really crisp. And I think he'll just be able to outbox Erosa. I think he'll use that jab, use his length, keep it in those low calf kicks, similar to his fight against Joseph Lowry. And I think he'll either stop him late on, or I can see it going to a decision and Devonte Smith picking up the win.
So you're backing against the guy that's took an L to John Gunther?
I'm backing the guy who's took an L to John Gunther, believe it or not.
Yeah, I am as well. I was having a bit of fun earlier as well on Twitter with some people that had bet Devonte Smith about that, but I don't think they were finding the funny side to it, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm picking Devonte Smith as well. It was only last year he took the loss to John Gunther, but
yeah,
he gassed out horribly in a really bad spot and a really bad position, and ultimately just paid the price for it. And yeah, he's an aggressive dude. Never been to a decision. 7 knockouts, 1 submission, so he is really a knockout artist opposed to anything else. But he's coming up against a really experienced guy, a guy that's had 27 fights. He's only 29 as well, so he's probably in and around his prime, sort of maybe. I don't know, with 27 fights and 29, you add those two sort of situations together, and he's probably towards the end of his prime. But he's still looking good as of late. And some of his losses are to notable guys like we've already mentioned, Paddy Pimblett, Teruto Ishihara as well. Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting fight because we saw Devonte Smith gas against John Gunther where he took his loss. And this is in Colorado, in Denver, in Colorado. And one thing we've not mentioned yet is the high altitude out there, and it's going to be really interesting to see because on these fights, whether we're watching it in Mexico or like I've just said about tonight in Denver, these really high altitude places, there's always a handful of fighters that will gas out terribly, whether they've not gone over there really enough to acclimatise or whether they've just not got great cardio anyway, and then the altitude just absolutely hammers them. So it's going to be interesting to see how Devonte Smith copes with that. But from what I understand, he trains out in Denver anyway, so he might actually be okay for this fight. And Julian Erosa, on the other hand, is a guy that's got good cardio as well. Like you said, 5 rounds hard with Paddy Pimblett. He didn't look like he was blowing too much either after that fight. So it's going to be interesting to see how both guys' cardios hold up. And I have got a funny feeling one of them's going to gas terribly. And we've taking into consideration we're in Denver and the altitude, I'm just not sure which one it's going to be. But ultimately, I'm going to go with Devonte Smith to win the fight. I think, like you said, he's got some nice leg kicks. He's got some nice combinations, some accurate shots as well, and also packs power in his shots. I think he's going to be the aggressor. I think he's going to come forward. Julian Erosa, he does keep his head straight whilst moving backwards, when he's sort of evading punches at times as well. So if he does that in this fight, then he's got a real good chance of getting caught by a bomb from Smith. So yeah, I'm going Devonte Smith to win, and I'm going to take him to win by knockout. And then in the next fight of the night, we've got a really interesting fight, in my opinion, and one that I'm really looking forward to. We've got the return of Beneil Dariush versus the newcomer Thiago Moises. Who have you got in this one, John?
Like you say, this is a really interesting fight. I really like the look from what I've seen of Thiago Moises. Again, another guy, how many times are we going to say this tonight? Another guy coming in off Dana White's Contender Series. And I thought he looked fantastic in that fight. Getting the first round stoppage, he hammered his opponent with a head kick. I mean, the head kick that knocked his opponent down, he was pretty much fully blocked as well. He had his arms up and he blocked it. That's how much power just filtered through and knocked him down. And then he got the subsequent ground and pound. But yeah, I really like this guy. He's very dangerous on the ground. If people haven't seen it, have a look on YouTube for his helicopter armbar against I think it was Dave Castillo in RFA. This dude's a legit talent on the ground. I know he's competed several times, EBI and EBI combat jiu-jitsu as well. He's a legit guy when it gets to the ground. So I think this guy's got a big future in the UFC. The one thing I have picked up on sometimes is not so much in his last couple of fights, but historically when I've looked through some of his fights, he's don't want to use the word tentative, but he just looks for that one big shot without really setting it up sometimes. But as I say, that seems to have filtered out a little bit as he's progressed through his career and over his last couple of fights. I haven't seen that as much, but I did notice it when I was looking at some old footage of him. Sometimes he does just throw one heavy shot, and once your opponent gets the read on that, which I'm sure a veteran like Dariush will be able to read that. He can't afford to do that. He has to use his combinations. He has to mix things up. Dariush, it'll be interesting to see how he comes back from that Alex Hernandez loss, because This is similar in some ways to the Hernandez fight. It's a bit of an unknown quantity. A guy coming in, making his UFC debut against a guy who's been around for a long time. He's always hung around in the top 15. And we saw what Alex Hernandez did. He absolutely starched him in like the first minute. So it'd be interesting to see how he comes back from that. I've seen a lot of people over social media over the build up to this fight saying that Dariush is done and stuff, but again, he's only 29 years old, and he hasn't got a massive fights on his record, although some of his fights, especially more recently, have been pretty brutal. Like I say, that Hernandez loss and that flying knee against Edson Barbosa, that was a real brutal knockout. So will they have taken their toll on Dariush? We'll obviously find out come the fight, but it's hard to tell. I never like to see people come in off the back of those brutal knockout defeats, especially like the ones against Barbosa and Hernandez. So it'll be interesting to see how Dariush is in his conditioning in that sense. But Dariush does have all the strengths to be able to win this fight. He could make it scrappy. He could grind it out. He could push Moises up against the fence and just hold him there and use his size. He's a big guy, Dariush, and try and keep him there and just make it as scrappy as he can. But I think the new guy's going to get the win. I think Thiago Moises is going to get the win in this one. Whether he'll finish Dariush, I don't know. How much is Dariush's chin depleted from those couple of knockouts? Again, I don't know. But I can see Moises getting the win in this one.
So, you know how people crossbreed dogs?
Yeah.
Right. So you tell me Thiago Moises isn't a cross, couldn't be the love child of Roberto Soldic and Sheymon Moraes. Style from a complete style perspective.
Yeah.
So he's only 23 years old, and man, like when I didn't really know too much about him before I started watching tape on this fight, and as soon as I watched him, I could instantly see shades of Soldic, who is the current KSW welterweight champion, and also Sheymon Moraes, who we saw get a 30-26 scorecard against Julio Arce last week. Shout out to that judge that scored that 30-26.
Yeah.
You know who was that judge? You know who that judge was?
Yeah, I can't remember who the name of them.
Are you sure you can't remember? Or are you sure you're not trying to out somebody on a podcast?
No, I genuinely can't remember. But that was outrageous. I mean, Twitter was blowing up as soon as the scorecards were read out. I don't know how somebody got 30-26 from that, but
sure. But yeah, so Soldic and Sheymon Moraes, put them together, and this is pretty much what you've got in Thiago Moises. He's got good Muay Thai, like you mentioned as well. And I think if you watch tape in a specific way, you'll see the progression. So if you start earlier on, he was quite tentative, as you've mentioned, and quite passive in putting combinations together and really landing volume. But the more and more you watch of him, bear in mind the dude's only 23 anyway, so he's going to be dropping leaps and bounds in his performances each time he steps inside the cage. So when you watch each individual fight as you're moving up, you do see the progression of him. You do see how he's growing and evolving his game. And he's also been at American Top Team for a while now as well. So that is absolutely going to work wonders for him. The fact that he's already faced quite good competition, his two losses coming to Watley and Jason Knight. You know, he was 20 years old when he fought Jason Knight, so that was a really good learning curve for him. So yeah, couple his age and where he's at with American Top Team, and also the competition he's faced and the promotions he's been fighting, and I think we are going to see a much more improved version anyway. This time around. He's got a good ground game, as you've already mentioned. The helicopter armbar was sick. Go and watch that if you can. Definitely recommend that. Dariush has got quite a similar style though. He's got a decent all-round game. He has got good Muay Thai. Trains with Master Rafael Cordero over at King's MMA, who has turned some really average strikers into world-class strikers. He's a legit talent, that guy, and he can make people learn from him so well. He's just unbelievable. So yeah, King's MMA, Dariush, good all-round game, good Muay Thai. He's a legit black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. So you know he's got a good ground game. But where I feel that they differ, Moises and Dariush, is I think that Moises is the quicker, more accurate striker, and he also packs more volume as well. Now, I also think he packs more power in his strikes, and I think this is where it's going to be key in this fight because of where Dariush is sort of at in his career. I think he's going to force Dariush to move backwards in exchanges because of the power. I do think Dariush is going to have that in the back of his mind that not only did he get brutally knocked out by Alex Hernandez, he also got brutally knocked out by Edson Barboza as well. And these aren't just knockouts, guys. Like, these aren't just knockdowns and then they're covering up and the referee's saving them. These are brutal career-changing knockouts. So
yeah, definitely.
It almost begs the question of where is he at in terms of his durability. I definitely think it's going to be in the back of his mind. I think when he gets cracked with a hard shot of Moises, I think he's going to have flashbacks of this happen again. I just think mentally, I am not sure where he's at. I'll be very surprised if he's coming in there positively. Sorry, not positively. I think that's the wrong word. But coming in thinking that he's okay to get hit with hard shots, I definitely think that's going to be playing on his mind.
Yeah.
The concern for Moises in this fight, though, big concern. If you go back and watch the Beneil Dariush and Rashid Magomedov fight, Dariush pinned him to the cage constantly, all fight, pinned him to the cage, did just enough for the referee not to split him up, was landing some nice shots in there, some short shots, but ultimately just wasting time, running the clock down, winning the round. And that's the key thing for these fighters. Sometimes it's not about putting on a performance, sometimes it's about winning a fight. And Dariush was fighting a guy that everyone thought was a top prospect in MMA, and Rashid Magomedov. I'm not saying he's not now, but everyone was really high on him at that point, and I think Dariush just went in there and did a job. But he proved that he can fight in that way. Now, Moises' loss to Watley was exactly how Magomedov lost to Dariush, pretty much. And that was him just being pinned to the cage and stuff like that. Now, I know Moises used to fight at featherweight, I think it is. I think he used to fight at featherweight, so he is quite small. He was quite small for a lightweight at the time, but I think the older he's getting, he's filling out into his body a little bit more. He's becoming a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. So I think when he lost to Watley, it was just a case of he was a little bit undersized and he was getting outpowered on the fence. Whereas Dariush, if Dariush tries to do that, he might have a little bit more success. But you've got to accept that when you're watching tape, that Moises is susceptible to this type of fighting, and Dariush has that in his locker. Ultimately, I'm going Moises to win the fight. I think the two brutal knockouts, like I've already mentioned, from Hernandez and from Barboza, and then you tie that with a fight in between that was Evan Dunham, who's now retired. So likely when Dariush was fighting him, so it wasn't a loss, it was a draw. Corrected there. But yeah, it's still not a good showing for Dariush in my opinion, because at that time Dunham was probably thinking about the exit door. It probably was on his mind. His body, I think, was done by that point as well. So even though Dunham looked like a warrior inside there and performed well in that second and third round, his durability I just don't think was there, and I just think Dariush just struggled against that, and I don't think that puts him in good stead to beat Thiago Moises. So I think Dariush is going to get knocked out. I don't think his chin holds up. I genuinely think that the Barboza and Hernandez knockouts have changed him, reduced his durability. So I'm going Thiago Moises to win via knockout. And then in the next fight of the night, we've got a really interesting fight. I've got some really strong opinions on this fight in regards to the stylistic matchup. We've got Chaz Skelly against someone that a lot of people are showing a lot of love to in the betting world, against Bobby Moffett. So who have you got in this one, John?
I'm going to be following suit with those guys that are favouring Bobby Moffett in the betting world, and I'm picking him for this one. It's an interesting, like you say, stylistic matchup. Chaz Skelly's a strong wrestler, but as is Moffett from the fights I've seen. That's his bread and butter, wrestling, getting the fight to the mat, and then from the fights I saw, he's always looking for submissions. He's constantly working for those submissions. In his win over Jacob Kilburn, again, we'll mention the show, Dana White's Contender Series. He picked up the Dariush choke in the second round, but he took him down very early on in the first round, and literally he must have attempted about 10 arm triangles in the first round while he had him on the ground. He was just constantly working for that sub. He didn't look like he was tiring. He looked like he could do it all day, to be honest. And going to Chas Skelly in his last fight, he lost to Jason Knight. Jason Knight's obviously now on a 4-fight losing streak, I think, since his loss at the weekend. And in that fight, they traded on the feet to start with, and then Skelly took him down, and then I think Skelly realised that Knight was a real danger on the ground. We know Jason Knight's got a really good guard. He was working for an omoplata early in that fight, and I think that first round, just the amount that Jason Knight worked on the ground and worked for those submissions, it seemed to just wear on Skelly, and Skelly looked tired when they were coming out for the second round. Eventually, he made his way to the third round, and Jason Knight could put him away on the feet because he looked pretty worn out from the previous 2 rounds. And that's my only worry in this fight again for Chas Skelly. He's like I say, he's a good wrestler. That's his go-to style. So if he does wrestle against Bobby Moffett, I think Moffett will work off his back. I'm not sure how good he is off his back. From the tape that I saw, that he tends to dominate when he's on top, and he works better looking for those submission wins when he's on top. He's coming in, like I say, off the back of back-to-back Dariush chokes, actually. He got a Dariush choke in his fight prior to the Jacob Kilburn one as well. So yeah, I think he does his best work when he's on top, but when he gets into those scramble situations, when his opponent's shelled up trying to get back to his feet, that's when he's dangerous with the Dariush. And I think it's gonna play out similar to Chas Skelly's last fight with Jason Knight. If he goes to the ground, I think Bobby's just going to work, constantly keep working, looking for submission, scrambling, and I think Skelly's going to tire. And I wouldn't be surprised if Skelly gets submitted in this one later on, possibly. But yeah, I'm going for Bobby Moffett in this one.
Yeah, I've been back and forward on this fight, and
it is a real close fight. I mean, I think from what I saw from the betting odds, it's really close as well.
It opened up reasonably wide. So it opened. I think Chas Skelly opened up. In fact, no, he did it. I'm sure Chas Skelly opened up at about -230 or something.
Okay.
And it closed instantly to Skelly being a -160 favourite, and it's been dropping ever since. And now Bobby Moffett's the favourite. That got switched tonight, and it's sort of a little bit where I've gone with this, because I initially leaned Chas Skelly. I watched tape, I leaned Moffett, but I'm now leaning back to Skelly again. And the problem I'm having with this fight is these two guys are about as close as you can get in regards to stylistic matchups as you're ever going to see in mixed martial arts. They're both, again, no disrespect, I know I'm sitting on my sofa breaking fights down, but they're both limited in the striking at this level. They've both got really good takedowns. Really good wrestling. They've both got really good grappling. They're both black belts in jiu-jitsu. The styles are, in the words of Mike Goldberg, are virtually identical, and it's really tough to pick between them. And I think the reason I'm going for Chas Skelly in this fight is I just think the wrestling is gonna be the decider in this. Whoever the better wrestler is, which is Chas Skelly in my opinion, is a former collegiate wrestler. His takedowns are solid. He'll chain them together. He'll go in for a single or a double, or he'll tie up against the cage and try and trip his opponent to the mat if he needs to. But also his defensive wrestling is really good, and I think that's going to be his key to victory here, because Bobby Moffett for sure is going to try and take this fight. I think they're both going to try and take this fight to the mat, and it's whoever gets there first and whoever spends more time on top is going to win. So Bobby Moffett for sure is going to attempt takedowns in this fight, and I just feel that Chas Skelly's got a much better chance of defending them than Moffett has of defending Skelly's takedowns when they come. But yeah, like I say, it's a bit of a weird one to call. And then you even start looking a little bit further. They both tire in fights. Chaz Skelly, as you've already mentioned, against Jason Knight, tired quite drastically. Bobby Moffett in the tape that I've watched, when it was it was a really late finish. Oh no, sorry, it was a decision. It was Enrique Gonzalez in that fight. He tired massively as well. I'd say maybe towards the end of the first round, but he's got a good second wind, Bobby Moffett, so maybe that's going to be an advantage for him in this fight. Whereas I don't think Skelly does recover as well as he does and produce that sort of second wind. So this is what I mean. It's just it's a crazy close fight. I actually think the line was ridiculous when it opened. I said at the time I think it should be a pick'em, and then now it's roughly a pick'em. I think Bobby Moffat's a slight favourite. So yeah, it's going to be a really, really close fight. I'm going to pick Chaz Skelly, as I've already mentioned. I'm going to pick him via submission as well. I know Bobby Moffat's got a legit black belt. His base was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when he started MMA, so that's his bread and butter. But I just think that if Chaz Skelly can get him down when he starts tiring before he hits the second wind, then I think he can get the submission. I think, though, if a finish doesn't come early from both of these guys, I think we will see a decision. When we see a decision, it's hard, but I would probably then start maybe to favour Moffett with this because of the whole second wind that I've just mentioned. But ultimately, I think Chaz Skelly is going to get it done reasonably early. I think he's going to be able to take the back of Moffett at some point when Moffat's maybe a little bit tired. And yeah, I think he'll get the rear naked choke and score the submission. So I've got Chaz Skelly to win this fight via submission. Then in the next fight of the night, we've got Ashley Yoder versus Amanda Cooper. So John, who have you got in this one?
This one, bit of a battle of the females who do really need a victory. In particular, Ashley Yoder, she's coming to the UFC from Invicta. She had a stint on The Ultimate Fighter, season 23. Then she came from Invicta, and she's lost 3 straight now. So it's pretty much lose this one and you're out, I think, unfortunately. And yeah, she's coming up against Amanda Cooper, who herself, as a record state, she's 3-4. They've both got their last opponent in common as well, Mackenzie Dern, albeit Amanda Cooper, I think it was fighting against a much heavier Mackenzie Dern than Ashley Yoder was. That was the fight where Dern missed weight by something ridiculous, by about 9 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, she didn't even care either.
Yeah, she wasn't bothered in the slightest, was she? But yeah, Amanda Cooper, she comes in from predominantly that boxing background. She's got good boxing, crisp striking, but her real weakness so far from what I've seen is when the fight hits the mat. I do think Ashley Yoder's more well-rounded. She does possess some power as well. That fight against Mackenzie Dern was really close, a close split decision that she lost. She did drop Mackenzie Dern in that fight as well. Ultimately, in this one, I'm going with Yoder, the girl on the 3-fight losing streak. Not something I'd usually do, but I just think she's more well-rounded. If she can close the distance against Amanda Cooper and not just get boxed up in boxing range, I think she can take the fight to the mat, and I think she'll be able to hold her down there long enough to take rounds in the judges' eyes. Like I say, she does pack some power in her punches. She's by no means terrible standing up, but I think her best bet is to be able to close the distance and take Amanda Cooper down and take her out of her natural boxing world. And I think she'll just grind it out. And I think it'll go the distance, but I think Yoder will get the win in this one.
Sure. And we're both from the UK, so I'm not sure how much you're going to know about this. I've got a feeling I know a little bit, but Fox Sports, they do some sort of promo release for the headline of the prelims, I believe. Now,
Yeah.
this is a whole Fox Sports card, so I don't know whether they've done it for this one, and it's only sort of on the pay-per-view cards, the big UFC numbered cards they do it. But I have got no idea how this is sort of the main event of the prelims. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they've even done a promo for this, because how can you? I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we've got a 5-4 against a 3-4. It's like
Yeah.
it's really tough to sort of break this fight down, man. Like they just. In all fairness to Ashley Yoder, the one thing I will say is she has lost 3 on the bounce, but those 3 have come against Mackenzie Dern, as you've already mentioned, Angela Hill and Justin Kish, which are all known names in the women's division. But
Yeah.
like for Amanda Cooper, you know, her only win in sort of like the last 2 years have been against Anna Elmos and Angela Magana. That's not even. I don't even think she's with the UFC anymore. So
Nah, she's not there. She fought over Rising, didn't she, recently, I think?
It's tough, man. But, you know, I suppose in a way I might be being a little bit too harsh, because when you look at Amanda Cooper's losses, Mackenzie Dern, Calvillo, Tatiana, and Aspen lads, so I've probably just been really fucking harsh to her thinking about it. But either way, you know, 3-4 in the UFC is just. If she loses this, I would imagine she's getting a walk in papers for sure.
Yeah, I think the loser gets cut. I'm pretty sure.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe for Yoder, but I suppose
reckon they'll give her 4 on the bounce.
Yeah, that'd be 4 on the bounce one. Yeah, you could be right. Ultimately, I'm picking Yoder to win this. I think she's got a better camp behind her. She's been at Team Quest with Dan Henderson for a while, and like you've already mentioned with the Mackenzie Dern fight, that fight was actually. She would have won that fight if it wasn't for that last takedown in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
Mackenzie Dern won that fight for herself by that takedown. She was gassed out. She was getting beaten up. I think if I remember rightly, she had the good first round, Mackenzie Dern. Yoder won the 2nd and then was on the way to winning the 3rd until she just got taken down. And it was literally that close. That's how close that fight was. So she was not far off from taking a win against Mackenzie Dern, which would have been a great win for her. She was a massive underdog in that fight as well. But yeah, I'm going Ashley Cooper to win this fight. I think that she can score takedowns against Amanda Cooper. I think on the feet, Cooper might just have the advantage in the striking, but if she is going to start having the advantage and start hitting Yoder more than she wants to be hit, the second that Cooper gets anywhere close to her, she's just going to get a hold of her and put her to the mat, I think. And from there, I don't think Cooper will be able to get up, but I don't think Yoder will be able to finish her. So I'm going Ashley Yoder to win this fight via decision. And then in the next fight of the night, again, another really fun fight. We've got Mike Trizano versus Luis Violent Bob Ross Peña. So what have you got in this one, John?
Yeah, I really like this fight, mainly due to the fact that I'm a very big fan of Violent Bob Ross, Luis Peña. He trains at American Kickboxing Academy now since his stint on the Ultimate Fighter. I think he was
over, yeah.
He did, yeah. So he's training with some absolute beasts over there. And I think he's actually come over to he's been over in Denver for a while now, because following quite closely on Twitter, he engages with his fans quite a lot on Twitter and the MMA community. And I think he came over quite early to Denver to, I assume, acclimatise, and he did some training over in Denver as well. But yeah, I just really like his style. He's long. I mean, for a lightweight to be 6'3", it's at a reach of nearly 200 centimeters. He's pretty crazy. But I say this quite often. I always like those guys who use all the weapons available to them. He'll use knees, elbows, as well as he's got a very strong kicking game. He's pretty dangerous everywhere. And I personally think if he hadn't have, I think he broke his foot in his opening bout in the Ultimate Fighter, which I know he's suffered from a few times before because of his heavy kicking style. But I think if he hadn't have broken his foot, I think he'd have gone on to win the Ultimate Fighter. I know that he was saying that this is the real for the real Ultimate Fighter title against Mike Trizano. But yeah, I'm favouring Luis Peña in this one. Trizano is dangerous. he's gutsy. He's again another pretty well-rounded fighter. But that fight against Joe Giannetti's another guy that I do really like, and it was a shame to see him cut, especially after he lost via split decision in
Yeah,
the
it was a
Ultimate Fighter
strange one.
finale. But I think Giannetti would have won in that fight, but he, he seemed to just be, and I think this is the reason why he got cut. He was in that final round. He was just almost as though he wasn't taking it seriously. He was kind of like messing around, and I know that's Joe Giannetti's style. He's quite eccentric, and he does things very unorthodox and things like that. But yeah, I think if it have just been Joe Giannetti, would have been a bit more disciplined in that and stuck to what he's good at. And I genuinely think Giannetti would have won that fight, and I think he'd have taken the decision. But ultimately, I think Luis Peña is going to he's going to be better on the feet. I think he's going to piece him up. I think similar to the Richie Smullen fight. I'm a big fan of Richie Smullen. Obviously, he's a guy who's fought over in the UK a lot on BAMMA. And I was a big fan of Richie Smullen on the show. Unfortunately, he had to pull out, and then him and Luis Peña fought on the Ultimate Fighter finale, and Peña just looked phenomenal in that fight and just absolutely battered Smullen. And I think it's going to be similar. I can see Peña uses a lot of volume. I just think he'll outstrike Trizano. I just think he can keep people at a distance with those long legs, and with all the different tools he's got in his arsenal. I just can't see past him in this one. It wouldn't surprise me if he finished him just through sheer volume. But if not, he'll take it on the judges' scorecards.
Yeah, I like Luis Peña as well. I cashed on him. I had a 4-unit bet on him cash against Richie Smullen when they last fought. And when I went into that tape with him and Smullen, I didn't really know too much about the guys. But then once I saw Smullen's game, he had sort of like a takedown wrestling game opposed to a striking game. So
Yeah.
that worried me with betting Peña, as I never normally like to bet against the guy that I think is fighting somebody that wants to take him down. That's sort of not something I like to do. So what that forced me to do is a lot of digging into Peña, and I found out he had aspirations and hopes of being an Olympic wrestler when he was younger. It never materialised, even though he did compete in wrestling. And I think he's got his own wrestling gym where he trains at. Where he teaches. Some degree of teaching anyway, and it forced me to do a lot of digging into his wrestling. I ended up taping a lot of his just pure wrestling bouts just to see how good he was, and he's got a really good wrestling base, and that is his base. His striking's developed from his wrestling, so I just think he's very, very well-rounded. Training at AKA, he's really tall, long, lanky for the division. That's going to be good for him when he gets taken down, because he's got a submission game to go with his wrestling game as well. So those long limbs will work in his favour. But ultimately, what Peña likes to do is he likes to load up the volume, throw the straight punches out there rather than looping hooks and things like that, as it can keep his opponent moving backwards and at bay, and then that also allows him to gauge the distance in and out of range whenever he decides to choose. And then that's when he starts looking for takedowns, the trips, the doubles, just trying to get the fight to the mat. And from there, like I say, on top, he's not a guy that you want on top of you. His grappling has really developed quite well from his wrestling, and like I say, he's one for the future. He's exciting. He's only 3-0.
Definitely.
It's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna be a total walk in the park here, though. Michael Trizano's also 7-0. So some fight, one of these guys is gonna take that first L in this fight. And yeah, it's gonna be a tough fight to start with, but I think once Peña's maybe got over being a little bit cagey, which he has looked like he's fought like that in the past, then once he starts flowing and feeling his way into the fight, I think he'll start having a lot of success. What I think will happen in this fight is what I've just mentioned, what he likes to do. I think he'll be throwing the straight punches. I think he'll be throwing the kicks. I think he'll be keeping Trizano at bay, but also keeping moving backwards, which is key. I think once he feels that he's got into the fight and he's starting to feel a little bit more comfortable and he's starting to let it all go a little bit, I think once he gets Trizano's back against the cage, I think he'll shoot in for a double. I think he'll take Trizano down and I think he'll submit him. So I've got Luis Peña to beat Michael Trizano via submission. And then in the next fight of the night, we've got Maycee Barber versus Hannah Cifers. So who have you got in this one, John?
Yeah, this one's another interesting fight. I'll be honest, I don't know a massive deal about both of these fighters. They're both making their debut in the UFC. I do know a little more about Maycee Barber because we saw her on Dana White's Contender Series. She got that win late into the third round against Jamie Colleen. But yeah, she looks dangerous from what I've seen. She's fought all of her professional career. She's 5-0 at the moment. She's fought all of her professional career over at LFA, which are a good organisation, and only one of her fights is on the distance. She looks like she definitely could be one for the future. At 20 years old as well, the ceiling for this girl could be pretty high. She looks very well rounded. Her last 2 wins come via ground and pound. When she gets the fight to the mat, she will look to finish. She's not one just to hold you down and maintain position. She does look for that ground and pound. And she's got submissions in her locker as well. She's got a win via rear naked choke and a win via armbar. Her opponent, to be honest, I haven't really seen a great deal on her. So for that reason, that's the only reason I'm picking Maycee Barber in this one, just because I know more about her. But from looking through her career, her opponent, she's got some stoppage wins to her name as well. She's got a lot of, especially her more recent fights. I mean, 3 of her last 4 fights have come via knockout or TKO. 4 of the last 5 have come by knockout or TKO. She has fought previously against UFC caliber fighters now. She fought against Julian Robertson. She did lose that fight, and Heather Clark as well in her professional debut. She lost both of those fights, but they were the Heather Clark fight was several years ago. Robertson was only just over a year ago, but she has fought 5 times and won 5 times since. Fought for Titan FC as well, who are again another good feeder promotion to UFC. But purely due to the fact that I've seen more of Maycee Barber, I'm going with her in this one. Like I say, I think she could have quite a high seed at just 20 years old. She's going to be one of the youngest ever competitors, possibly the youngest ever female competitor. I can't think of many who were younger when they came into the UFC. Paige Van Zandt maybe. But yeah, I'm going with Maycee Barber in this one.
Yeah, I'm going with Maycee Barber as well. Now, again, similar to you, I don't really know too much about these women. You know, I saw the betting line before I even dived into tape, and it sort of put me off a little bit of looking too much into it. You know, Maycee Barber's a minus 420 favourite. Hannah Cifers at plus 335, so he's just absolutely nothing that I'm ever even going to dive into too much or look into at all, just purely based on that betting line. Is for me, it's just those sort of lines just aren't worth betting in mixed martial arts. But in regards to a pick, I'm going with Maycee Barber as well. I always like a fighter that looks to finish when she gets on the mat as well, and you know, always putting that pressure on, always looking dangerous. And I think when you look at the level of competition that Hannah Cifers has fought, so she's fought girls that are 10 and 14, 0 and 1, 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 0 and 1, 1 and 1, 0 and 2. You know, the level of competition she's been fighting is quite significantly worse. Well, it's a lot worse than what she's going to be fighting in this fight with Maycee Barber, because Maycee Barber has got a good record herself. She's also, you know, you look at her opponents, 4-1, 1-0. So again, it's not too much of a contrast, but she's fought a lot of women with positive records, so she's at least got that behind her. Ultimately, like I say, I'm not really too sure on either girl. I do think Maycee Barber is going to take the fight. She's younger. She's going to be improving more from fight to fight. Hannah Cifers is only 26, so she's not exactly old herself. But at 20 years old, you are literally going to be developing every hour that you're in that gym. So, between fights, the difference is going to be absolutely astronomical. Barber will be the slightly taller fighter, the slightly longer fighter. She can keep her at bay. She'll probably pick her apart on the feet. If she does go to the ground, like we've already mentioned, she'll probably try and always look to get the finish in that fight as well and get her out of there. So, 5-0, Maycee Barber. And I think she's going to get it done via decision.
Can you think of any younger fighters especially in the women's divisions than 20 years old? Off the top of my head, I'm just trying to think if anyone's come in and made their UFC debut that young, or whether she could be the youngest.
I don't know, man. Like I think there's something screaming at me that we may have seen an 18 or a 19-year-old in the UFC. I'm not sure. Look, if anyone's listening to this and drop it in the comments, because it's an interesting point. Like we always talk about the male fighters and how young they come in and young champions and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting if anyone's got some facts or some statistics regarding the women's division and that question in particular. For some reason, I feel that we've seen an 18 or a 19-year-old female inside the cage, though. I don't know who it is.
Possibly.
I don't know. I can't think. I've got a funny feeling if it was, it may have been from one of the Asian cards.
That
screams out at me
ringing a bell to me as well. Yeah.
But I don't know.
Question for the listeners then.
For sure,
that can be the question for the week.
Enlighten us. And in the next fight of the night, we've got Joseph Benavidez versus Ray Borg. Now, before we dive into this, I just want to send my best wishes to the Borg family. Ray and his wife have had a child, and they've had a lot of health problems with the child, been in and out of hospital and things like that. As a parent myself, and I'm sure as a new parent yourself as well, John, you'll say the same. No parent should go through that. So. The last I heard, I don't know too much about the situation. I'm only going from what I see on social media. The last I heard, there was a successful operation. So hopefully little Anthony's on the mend and getting better. And my wishes go out to the Borg family for sure. But onto the card, John. Who have you got?
This is an interesting fight. Ray Borg, of course, coming off the loss in the title fight to Demetrius Johnson. Can't believe that was over a year ago as well. It doesn't seem like a year ago, but just goes to show how much time's flying. When I was looking over this fight and I was doing my research and stuff, Joseph Benavidez has been around for ages. He's got like 30 professional fights, 34 years old now. He's a veteran. He's a veteran of the lighter weight classes as well. He's pretty much fought anyone who's anyone in the lighter weight classes. And I was looking at Ray Borg's run up to his title fight with Demetrius Johnson, and I was actually quite shocked. I thought he had, no disrespect to anyone that he's beaten on his record, but I thought he had a few more bigger named wins than he actually has. He came into the title fight against DJ off the back of 2 wins against Louis Smolka, who has obviously been cut from the UFC now, and then Hussein Formiga, who he's a dangerous guy. He's a talented guy. He's one of the top guys in the division. But prior to that Smolka fight, he lost to Justin Scoggins, and then when you look at his fights in the UFC, he lost his debut fight to Dustin Ortiz, and then his wins outside of Smolka and Formiga against Herrera, Chris Kalades, and Shane Howell. Like I say, no offense to those guys, but when you compare them to the guys on Joseph Benavidez's record, I know he lost that last fight to Sergio Pettis, a very close split decision. But the fight before that, he beat the now champion Henry Cejudo. Again, a very close split decision. But yeah, when you look at some of the names that that Joseph Benavidez has fought. Zach Makovsky, Ali Bagatinov, John Moraga, Tim Elliott, Dustin Ortiz, Demetrius Johnson twice, Formiga, Ian McCall, Eddie Wineland. I mean, he's fought a who's who of these. Miguel Torres, Dominic Cruz. He's pretty much fought anyone who's been around the top 5 of the lighter weight classes, and he's done it consistently throughout his career. They're both strong wrestlers. Ray Borg, you look and think that his strength is his wrestling, and that's his main go-to. But Joseph Benavidez is a very strong wrestler. Obviously, he fought out of Team Alpha Male for a long time, and they're all fantastic wrestlers in the lighter weight classes there. And I think Benavidez has the better stand-up as well. So if they both cancel each other out with regards to the wrestling, I think Benavidez will win the stand-up battle. So yeah, I think Benavidez is going to win this one. I think it's going to be a relatively comfortable unanimous decision.
I'm going the opposite way in this one, and I'm going to disagree with a lot of points that you've made. The one thing I will bounce back though for sure is you mentioned about Ray Borg and the sort of the level of competition leading up to his title run, and yeah, I agree with you, and I get that. You got to remember though, when he fought Dustin Ortiz, he was a 20-year-old entering the UFC.
Yeah, of course.
As raw as you get, as green as you get, and he fought someone like Dustin Ortiz, who is a very, I think he's a top talent. I like Dustin Ortiz. Then when you look back to Joseph Benavidez, where he was at that sort of age, he was fighting fighters I've never even heard of: Maurice Ezel, Jason Georgiana, Rocky Del Monte, Carlos Lovio. He was fighting some guys.
Justin Smithley. Yeah.
I think what you've got to take into consideration at that point when Borg was fighting that lower level of competition is he was young, he was new to the UFC, also new to the sport as well, and I think the reason he got that title shot against Demetrius Johnson was purely for the fact of how good he looked inside the cage. Now, it doesn't matter what level of competition is inside the cage, especially if it is lower level than yourself. All you can do is beat what's in front of you, and Ray Borg was doing that convincingly. So I think that's the reason why his rise has been so great, so rapid, and why he got that title shot. And let's be honest, he gave Mighty Mouse a fucking fight in that fight.
He certainly did. Yeah,
he took him down 3 times, something that not many other fighters have been able to do. I think only maybe Cejudo's managed to do that successfully on a regular basis. He had 2 or 3 seconds on top of Mighty Mouse before the scramble started, and he got out of that. That's 2 or 3 seconds longer than most other fighters. He was landing some nice shots later in the fight. He didn't tire. He's always Ray Borg's missed weight a couple of times. He's quite big for that division, but his cardio's good. His cardio's on point. And the Hussier Formiga fight before that title fight was just an incredible win. And I think it's this sort of performance where I think he's going to beat Benavidez, because he relies on his wrestling in most fights. He's a good wrestler. I don't think he's got any sort of like credentials, like collegiate or national credentials, the same as Benavidez as well. They both just seem to be just naturally good MMA wrestlers. But in the Formiga fight, he couldn't rely on that because of Formiga's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and his ground game and his submission game. So he was having to strike with Formiga, who, by the way, in my opinion, is a really underrated striker himself. And he hung well with Formiga. He was landing combinations nicely. And man, what won him that fight? I bet Ray Borg that night, by the way, and I bet him to win by decision. It was way before I turned professional in this gambling game. I was still a rookie and, getting free bets from bookies and stuff like that. And I think it was a free bet that I threw on by decision. But man, what won him that fight was that final round where Formiga had his back. And by the way, Formiga held onto the fence when Borg was about to take him down. That's something that really pissed me off in that fight because Formiga was about to win the fight because of that fence grab. But Formiga took him back and got a body triangle, and Borg spun round in it. Like, his grappling is just as good as his wrestling. His scrambles are good as well. I don't even think it's a bad thing if Benavidez comes out here. A bad thing for Borg if Benavidez comes out and tries to take him down, because I think his scrambles are just awesome. I think he'll put himself in advantageous positions, or he'll stand back up and go for his wrestling himself. In regards to striking, I disagree. I think Ray Borg's the better striker here. If you look back at the Pettis fight in Benavidez' last fight, he was showing a lot of disrespect to Pettis' striking in that fight. In my opinion, he was throwing combinations without returning his guard, putting his hands back up to his chin. He was throwing wild shots, leaving his chin open. He was backing up with his chin high. The chin was just out all the time, and in my opinion, apart from that first round where Pettis dropped him, Pettis didn't really capitalise on it at all. And I just feel that if Benavidez is showing that sort of striking defence against one of the better strikers in the division, I think he's going to do exactly the same against Ray Borg. You know, why would he not worry about Pettis but then worry about Ray Borg when Pettis is the better striker, you know? I think Ray Borg's got clean, crisp shots. I think he throws combinations nicely. He packs a little bit of power. I don't think it's going to be enough to knock Benavidez out, but he lands. And when you look at the volume of these guys, Joe Benavidez statistically has got the way more volume, but that's over a career of, he was he is one of the best flyweights that have ever lived in mixed martial arts. He was at a high level when he was a bit younger, and that's another thing I just want to move on to as well. He's 34 years old, which in the flyweight division is old. As a heavyweight, you're in your prime. As a flyweight, you're pretty old at 34. And I think I can remember when he stood on the scales, one of my buddies on Twitter had bet Joe Benavidez. So when I saw him on the scales in his last fight against Pettis, I just thought, holy shit, like he does not look how he used to look. Like he just looked old. He looked really old, and he looked like a 34-year-old flyweight. His performance also wasn't spectacular against Pettis, so is Joe Benavidez going to look any better in this fight at 34 years old? I don't think so. I really don't think we see a better performance. He might fight on the same level, or the likelihood is he could be worse, whereas Ray Borg's on a completely different trajectory in his career. He's 25, he's getting better from fight to fight. I know he's had a lot of distractions, with his family and his son and things like that, but then you go back and look at his social media. He was back training at Jackson Wink from July, I think. And he's also been helping other fighters during their camps and during his camp as well. He's had a full camp at Jackson Wink, which is important. If he was elsewhere or if he wasn't training, I could be picking the opposite side here, but he's had a full camp at Jackson Wink. I feel that with MMA and MMA fighters, I feel that could be their escape as well to stuff that's happening in their life, sort of something to focus on, which is great for the mind in general. He's pulled it all together. He's trained properly for the fight. And also, he keeps mentioning that he's fighting for his son. Now, I would never want to fuck with the guy that's fighting for his child. A lot of people are saying it could mentally, it could be a stumbling block mentally for him that he's had these, the health issues with his son. I think it'll be a complete flip reverse of that. I just feel that he is going to go out there determined to fuck Joe Benavidez up, hopefully get some bonus money. If he gets a finish, the UFC have got to give him that money, man.
Definitely.
So I'm going Ray Borg to win. And I think he's going to do it by decision. I don't think the finish comes, unfortunately. I think it can be a fun fight, and if it is, I hope the UFC give him the fight of the night bonus, so they can both take a little piece of that away. And I've got Ray Borg to win via decision. And then in the next fight of the night, we've got Raquel Pennington versus the returning Germaine at Randamie. So who have you got in this one, John?
This is an interesting one. I'm not sure what kind of reception Randamie is going to get from the fans, because I know she upset quite a lot of people when she defeated Holly Holm. A lot of people thought that it should have gone the other way anyway, the decision. And then she seemed to basically just not want to fight Cyborg in any way, shape or form before relinquishing the title, and Cyborg fought for it against another opponent. So yes, I don't think I'm not sure what kind of reception she's going to get from the crowd when her name's announced. But yeah, this is quite an interesting fight, because I was looking at this one, and when I first saw it announced, I immediately went to Raquel Pennington. I thought she'll take Randamie down. We've seen her do it quite well in the 4 fights leading up to the title fight against Amanda Nunes. And Pennington's very durable, and she's got that. We mentioned it earlier with some of the other fighters, but she's also got that kind of gritty, grinding style. She'll take you down. She'll be in your face. She'll use her boxing to set up her takedowns, and then she'll hold you down basically, and try and just beat your face in while you're on the ground. But then the more I've looked at it, the more I think about it. Randamie's much bigger. Obviously, we saw her last fight was at featherweight. She's built for a woman as well. She's 5'10". She's fought at featherweight a few times in her career. So yes, it's going to be a lot more of an interesting fight than I initially thought. I initially thought straight away, I think Pennington's going to win this one. And the more I've looked at it, I've actually changed my decision. I'm going for Randamie. I do think that that size advantage, she's just naturally bigger. I think if she can fend off the takedowns, I think it'll end up similar to the Pennington against Amanda Nunes fight, because Randamie's a decorated kickboxer. She's got fantastic striking. She's one of the most dangerous strikers in the women's division. That's why people were so much looking forward to her versus Cyborg, which unfortunately never came to fruition. The only thing we also have to take into consideration is what sort of approach will she take. Will it be that horribly tentative style that we saw against Holly Holm? I unfortunately made the trip over for UFC 208.
Bless your soul.
Yeah, forking out all that money to go over to New York. Luckily, we made a nice holiday out of it. It promised so much when there was fights being rumoured for the card, and then obviously everything fell through, and it ended up being Holly Holm against Randamie for the featherweight belt, which the division really still hasn't taken off in any way, shape or form. It's just feed anyone to Cyborg that they can. But will Randamie come out similar to how she did against Holly Holm? Because they were both very tentative. Neither of them wanted to pull the trigger. I know that Holly Holm's a very good striker as well. She's come from that boxing background. So maybe that's why Randamie was a lot more cautious in her striking. But possibly in this fight, she'll open up against Pennington a lot more. She's very dangerous in the clinch as well, that Muay Thai clinch. She'll use her knees and elbows really well. Saw that against Anna Elmos as well. She won that vicious knee to the body. I was fortunate enough to be at that event as well in Rotterdam. Randamie fighting in front of her home fans, so that was a good experience, and she looked very good in that fight. But that fight against Holly Holm, it wasn't the best of performances. Let's put it that way. I'm not sure, but I do believe that Randamie's been training at AKA as well. So that's going to help if she has been training there. That's definitely going to help her wrestling. They've got some beasts over there. They're known for their strong wrestling, which will help in this Pennington fight. So
yeah, I've not seen that. Must have missed that.
I'm only basing this on what I've seen on the internet. I've not actually seen any footage or anything of that. I've just got an affiliation to her. I think it was on Tapology. I saw that she was affiliated to AKA. So whether that's legitimate or not, I'm not sure. Because obviously she's normally naturally trains over in Utrecht in the Netherlands, where she was born. So I don't know if that's just a camp that she'll come over when she's in an actual fight camp and spend a few weeks there or what. But either way, I do think Randamie's going to win this fight. I think because of her bigger frame, her bigger size, I think she'll be able to avoid Pennington's takedowns. And I think in the striking exchanges, I think there's only one winner, and that's Randamie. Pennington, like I say, she's very durable. So she only got finished very late on by Nunes. I think it was in the final round, wasn't it? She sat in a corner at the end of the fourth round saying that she couldn't continue. She didn't want to carry on, but the corner sent her out there, and then Nunes put her away. I don't think Randamie's going to finish her, but I think she'll be able to keep it standing long enough to inflict some damage on the feet and take the fight in the judge's eyes.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, when I first saw the fight get announced, I did heavily lean Randamie, but then the more I watched tape, the more I had my slight doubts about her. And I feel that if this fight stays standing and there's not too much takedown attempts and things like that from Raquel Pennington, I think Randamie is gonna dominate her on the feet. Her Muay Thai is world class. A kickboxing, a whole striking game is really, really solid, and I think that alone would beat most fighters in the UFC. Now, what Pennington needs to do, she needs to be really clever, she needs to be really sneaky and really smart in how she goes about this, but she needs to get the fight to the mat. Now, Pennington's not the type of fighter that will shoot in for many single legs or double legs, so your natural wrestling takedown. She's more of a clinch up, body lock and trip and throw to the mat type of fighter. Now, the problem she's going to have in doing that is if she clinches up with Randamie and she's not careful with how she goes about getting the body lock, she could end up getting herself on the wrong end of a tie, plum clinch, whatever you want to call it, and really eating some elbows and knees, which again is Randamie's game. So sort of where Pennington needs the fight to be, she has to go through where Randamie is going to be strongest, and she's going to be I think she's going to be physically stronger as well. By how much, I'm not sure, but I just think she's going to be a little bit stronger. Now, it is possible to take Randamie down, and Holly Holm was trying, but she was trying with the natural wrestling takedown, so she was trying with singles and doubles, but like I've already mentioned, that's not Raquel Pennington's style of takedown. I think Pennington could get her down with a body lock, clinch, trip, and get her down that way. I don't know how many times though, and I don't know if she'll end up getting deterred if she takes too many shots in trying to do so. But what I do know is, what I do think is, if Raquel Pennington does take Randamie down, I don't think, and that's flat on her back, by the way. Once she's flat on her back, I don't think Randamie gets up for the rest of that fight. No. For the rest of that round. So potentially, how many minutes are left on the clock when that particular takedown happens, could ultimately win Pennington a round. So that alone for me gives Pennington a path to victory. Now, the other thing to consider, again, we mentioned it a few times, it's in Denver, the altitude's high. Randamie's coming over from Holland in Europe, where there's fucking zero altitude, pretty much,
Especially Holland, yeah.
And
one of the flattest countries in the world.
Exactly. And Raquel Pennington trains in Colorado Springs, so she's gonna be fully acclimatized. It's not even gonna be any different for her. Whatever she trains and trains in on a day-to-day basis, she'll be fighting in. So I think if she can get Randamie down early and Make Randamie really, really try and force the stand up and waste a little bit of energy, that could affect Randamie with the altitude. I know she has gone over to Colorado. She's been there for about a week, I think, so she'll be trying to acclimatise to it. But listen, when you get inside that cage, under the lights, inside the arena, it's a different matter. Like, it's a different sort of, it'll be a different sort of energy, and your gas tank emptying will be a little bit different to what you think you're going to be used to and things like that. So that's Germaine. That's Raquel Pennington's path to victory. That's if she can get her down. Now, I think the fight's going to go the distance, but it all depends on how beat up that leg gets of Raquel Pennington. Nunes hit her early on with the leg. She had the motorcycle accident where she broke her leg, I believe. She came back, and she said in an interview after the fight as well that after that first leg kick hit, it hurt, and that was sort of the beginning of the end for her in regards to that leg, which is sad because that first leg kick was very early in round one. It's been about 5 or 6 months since that fight, so how much has that leg healed? Who knows? If Germaine Randamie is smart, she'll go straight for it. and she might end up getting her out of there if she really puts a lot of pressure on that leg and if it's really not healed to 100%. But I'm going to go for Randamie to win via decision. I'm going to give Pennington the benefit of the doubt, the fact that she is tough, she isn't easy to put out. It took Amanda Nunes 5 rounds to do it herself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going D Randamie to win, and I'm going to take her to win via decision. And then in the next fight of the night, the co-main event of the evening, one that I'm really looking forward to, we've got Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Mike Perry. A little bit of an interesting backstory here, the fact they used to train together. Depending on which side you've listened to and which side you believe. I'm personally sitting on the fence for it. Apologies, that's just the way it is. But from what I heard from Donald Cerrone's side is Jackson Wink decided to corner Mike Perry over Cerrone in the fight, and that led to Cerrone leaving, and he was happy doing that with the other things that he mentioned that went on in the gym that we won't dive into too much. But yeah, a really interesting fight. Who have you got in this one, John?
Yeah, like you say, there's been a bit of
animosity.
Yeah, animosity, ill talk of regarding Jackson Wink over the last few months. Obviously, Donald Cerrone, the main perpetrator behind that. Obviously, as you say, from what we've read and what he said, it looks as though Mike Perry's gone over there to train. He used to train over in Florida, I believe, and then he's gone over to train there, and it looks like they've now, backed him and said that they're going to corner him over Cerrone, who's been at Jackson Wink for a number of years. So if that is the case, it's a shame. Cerrone's been there for absolutely years, but I suppose this is it's a ruthless business. And Cerrone, I know he does train at his he's set up a full-time camp at his ranch now, hasn't he? But I know he did used to train at his ranch previously. So I think he tends to bring a lot of his sparring partners into his ranch, and he's got a big training facility there that he set up himself. But yeah, that's going slightly off topic as to the fight itself. Fight itself is an interesting one. This is another tough one to pick. I mean, Mike Perry, of course, he's an animal. he's crazy. If anyone follows him on social media, he's absolutely nuts. I mean, he's getting a bit of bad press regarding his recent social media posts where he's dressing up as a Native American and things like that. So yeah, he's a crazy dude, but he's also a beast. He's not afraid to fight anybody. But whether he's got at the moment, he looked better in his fight against Paul Felder since he's been training at Jackson Wink for that fight as well. And he did look better. He looked more disciplined. He wasn't as wild. His technique was crisper. He looked like he was mentally in the fight a lot better than his previous fights. I mean, his head corner person for his previous fights was his ex-girlfriend, I believe. Yeah. And yeah, that no offense to her, but she's not going to be at the same level as of a coach as somebody like Greg Jackson and Mike Winklejohn. So we saw that in the Paul Felder fight, but again, that he won that fight by a split decision. But I believe, was it the first round that Felder broke his arm in that fight? Or was it the second round? He went for that spinning back fist, didn't he? And he broke his arm in that fight. So that could have ended up completely differently had Felder not broke his arm. I think Felder would have won because he could barely throw his one hand. So obviously that's he was still continuing to throw, but obviously if you've broke your arm, you're not going to have anywhere near as much pop and as much power in the strike. So that could have ended differently. It was a very close fight anyway. Had Felder got the use of both his arms, I think he could have won that fight. Cerrone, on the other hand, he has lost 4 of his last 5 fights, but they're all to beasts as well. I mean, Jorge Masvidal, Robbie Lawler, Darren Till, and then one of my favourite fighters, Birmingham-known Leon Rocky Edwards in his last fight. And he didn't look bad against Edwards. I mean, sandwich in between the Till and the Edwards fight was that win over Medeiros again, where he looked very good. His striking looked crisp in that fight. And Medeiros is a dangerous guy. He's got knockout power as well. And I think after the Darren Till fight, a lot of people are like, "Oh, Cerrone's chin's gone," because he's been fighting for years. He's fought feels like thousands of times, but it hasn't. We saw in the Leon Edwards fight, although Leon isn't particularly well known for his knockout power and things. Cowboy can still take a shot. Again, we saw that in the Medeiros fight. Medeiros has got power, and he withstood his punches and got the win. And I can see Cerrone getting back in the win column in this fight. He's the more experienced fighter. He has got the ability to take the fight to the ground. He's got good jiu-jitsu when he's on the ground. It just really had the thing that I've been umming and ahhing over. I think it's going to be a very close fight. It's by no means an easy decision to pick Donald Cerrone. It's just how much Mike Perry has progressed again from the Paul Felder fight to this Donald Cerrone fight, training at Jackson Wink. I mean, that fight was only was about 4 or 5 months ago now, back in July. So yeah, it's about 4 months ago. How much has he improved in that time? Again, in his striking, because we know Cerrone's got crisp striking. We know he's dangerous on the feet. So it's just how much he has improved since then. If he goes the distance, I think Cerrone will win. But it sounds like I'm sitting on the fence. If he goes the distance, Cerrone wins, I think. But I wouldn't be surprised, because Perry has got power. If Mike Perry did catch him and put him away, but yeah, my pick, if I had to pick, and it is a close pick, it would be Donald Cerrone wins this fight and gets back in the win column.
Yeah, I agree, and I thought I was going to be on my own with this pick, to be honest. It seems it's that way on MMA Twitter anyway. But yeah, I think that Mike Perry is going to be extremely dangerous for that first round. I also agree with a lot of the points that you made as well with the Darren Till fight. I was also on that bandwagon as well, by the way. You know,
Yeah.
I never mind holding my hands up when I'm wrong, and I just believe I was wrong about Donald Cerrone. I thought he was done. He looked old against Till. He got flattened and just didn't look great. And at that point, you're thinking, yep, Donald Cerrone's done. You know, I bet Yancy Medeiros against Cerrone for that reason, and you know, I was wrong, and that's fine to be wrong in this sport. You know, it throws you about here, there, and everywhere. But with Mike Perry, even though I don't think Cerrone is done and I don't think his chin is gone, Mike Perry can definitely knock him out. You know, if he catches him on the chin, he's going to sleep. But it's interesting with the point that you mentioned as well, with how Mike Perry looked a lot more calmer, a lot more relaxed, a lot more patient against Paul Felder. Ultimately, you know, we're saying that's come from training with Jackson Wink, and that's them that's changed Perry in that way. But I ultimately feel that Perry has to be his old self against Cerrone if he's going to win, because if he tries to be patient against Cerrone and tries to go technique versus technique with Cerrone, he's going to get beaten, because I don't think he has striking punches and kicks. I don't think he has greater technique than Cerrone. He might have the better hands, the quicker hands, the more accurate hands, but when you're adding in kicks and knees and the clinch and stuff like that, I just think if he tries going technique versus technique against Cerrone, he's going to get beaten up on the feet. Ultimately, I do think it's going to go past that first round. I think Cerrone is going to be evasive. He's going to have to fight on the back foot. He's going to have to use angles to get away from Mike Perry, to stay away from the power. And if he can make Mike Perry throw a lot of punches at air in that first round and ultimately just take that edge off Perry's cardio, which will take the edge off the power, I think he can survive. And what's interesting as well is, in an interview with Mike Perry, I can't remember where the interview was. I'd give credit if I could remember it. But in an interview with Mike Perry, he said that when they trained together, Donald Cerrone pretty much always got the better of him in the grappling exchanges on the mat, which
Yeah.
is so interesting because that's where Cerrone needs to be in this fight. You know, you don't want to be standing with Mike Perry, especially not in round one. He wants to try and take Perry down, empty a little bit of gas tank, which, like I said, will take a little bit of pop off the punches. And he really wants to be working that ground game. And I think if he does get him to the ground, he's going to submit Mike Perry. Not just because of what I've heard of the interview, that only adds fuel to the fire, but Cerrone's submission game is really, really good, and I would imagine that Cerrone's submission game is head and shoulders above. Cerrone's submission offense is head and shoulders above Mike Perry's submission defense.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the submission will come. And then, obviously, like I said, with Mike Perry saying that Cerrone always got the better of him in grappling, you know, that just makes that pick a little bit more confident. But then Perry was saying, you know, when it was standing, I was owning Cerrone. You know, I was beating Cerrone on the feet. Ultimately, like I say, Cerrone has to be evasive in round one, which I think he will do. He has to either stay at distance. He has to be either all the way out or all the way in. He cannot stay in boxing range with Mike Perry because he will get flatlined and very quickly. So I think he'll probably be evasive, stay on the outside, stay out of range of the power. But then when he does come in, he'll be coming in to clinch or to take down. And he might even just leave that till round two. He might just, you know, spend round one doing his defensive duties, sticking to a game plan, and then going into round two and really looking to get the win. But then the other side to Cowboy Cerrone is he just loves to scrap. So, you know, are we going to get him just going in there? But, you know, he's got nothing left to prove in the sport. Donald Cerrone, he's a veteran, he's a legend, he's been in some amazing fights. He's a fighter that everyone in the world of MMA is going to appreciate. He's got nothing left to prove. He can go in there and he can have fun, he can fight, he can scrap, and, you know, it's not going to be a loss against Mike Perry or a knockout against Mike Perry. Taking that loss in this position, it's not too much of a bad thing for him. Obviously, he doesn't want that to happen, but from a career progression point of view, it's not really going to have any sort of effect. So he can go in there, he can try and have fun, he can put on a fight and try and earn himself a nice 50 grand bonus at the end of it. So you've got that side to him as well. And if he does that, I do feel that he'll probably get knocked out. So I'm a little like you in that sense. But for me, it almost depends on what Cerrone turns up in the cage. I'm going with the first Cerrone for the sake of the pick. I think that if he fights smart, I think he knows if he fights smart, he can get the win here, which I'm sure he would like to get the win with all the animosity that's been between the guys. You know, I don't think anything would make him happier than to not only beat Mike Perry, but to beat the gym that he's just moved from all the stuff that was mentioned in that podcast that he had with Joe Rogan. So I'm going Donald Cerrone to win, and I'm going to take him to win via submission. Now, in the next fight of the night and in the main event of the evening, we've got Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung versus Yair Rodriguez. Now, this was supposed to originally be Korean Zombie and Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar pulled out, unfortunately, due to injury. In my opinion, no disrespect to Frankie, Yair stepping up makes this a much better fight. So, John, who have you got?
I'm in complete agreement with you. The Frankie Edgar fight, it's a good fight. I was looking forward to it, but this fight for me, I'm super excited for this one. Part of the reason why I spoke to you earlier in the week, and I'm a massive Chan Sung Jung fan. I love the guy. He's one of my favourite fighters. If I've ever got 20 minutes spare on my lunch at work, I'll stick a Chan Sung Jung fight on my on UFC Fight Pass on my phone, and they always get me hyped. But yeah, it's a tough one to call. This is because Rodriguez is coming in on short notice. As we know, he hasn't fought for over a year, where he got just brutalized by Frankie Edgar. He just took him down over and over again over the course of 2 rounds, and just hammered him on the ground with ground and pound before the doctors stopped it. Chan Sung Jung, on the other hand, has fought once since 2013. So obviously his prior gap, he was doing his military service between the the Jose Aldo fight, and then his return fight against Dennis Bermudez back in February of last year. He was doing his national service with Korea then, but this is a different layoff. I mean, he completely blew out his knee, and that's a completely different ball game to being away on military service and military duties. So from what I believe, he's had to have his knee completely rebuilt. So there's tears to his ACL, MCL, all kinds of nasty injuries. So yeah, that has to be taken into consideration when picking this fight. But when I think about that, and I think about people who've come back from serious knee injuries, just off the top of my head, George St. Pierre, another one of my guys from Birmingham, Tom Breeze, he suffered a very serious knee injury before the Dan Kelly fight, and those guys have come back looking strong. So for me, that doesn't worry me too much. It will worry me more when Rodriguez starts landing those leg kicks. So that's something that Chan Sung Jung needs to be careful of, because he's quite heavy on that lead leg. So we have to be careful of Rodriguez just chopping that away from him. Chan Sung Jung's got 5 rounds in him. We've seen him fight a couple of times in main events. Although they both only went to the 4th round, he still looked relatively good in the cardio department. But I just love this guy. He's got a crazy style. He's dangerous on the feet. We saw that against Dennis Bermudez. We've seen that against Mark Hominick. But he's ridiculously dangerous on the ground as well. He's got some crazy submissions. His win over Dustin Poirier, the Darce choke. His twister over Leonard Garcia. He's got some fantastic submissions up his sleeve as well. And I think that's where he could edge this fight if he can get the fight to the ground, because his wrestling's not bad either. He has got good trips as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if he does clinch and get trip takedowns. And that's where I think he excels over Yair Rodriguez. What he's got to be careful with Rodriguez is his kicks, and making sure that he doesn't just stay in kicking range, because it could be a long night for him in that circumstance. Again, I'm big on Rodriguez. I like Rodriguez, but when similar to what I was saying with the Borg fight, I know you had a different opinion on the Borg fight, but when I look at Rodriguez, who he's fought in his career, he's got some, by no means he's got some great names, but his last win was against BJ Penn. BJ Penn should have hung them up for me 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Alex Caceres, I'm a fan of Bruce Leroy. I do like his style. And he won that it was a close split decision, but Caceres is never going to really challenge for the in the top of the division. He's for me, he's an exciting fighter. Caceres for me is similar to a poor man's Rodriguez. He's got a similar style, some crazy kicks and things like that. Andre Fili is a tough guy again, but I don't know if he's one of the top guys in the division. Dan Hooker and Charles Rosa are 2 good wins. Dan Hooker we've seen is a beast, but this was when Hooker was fighting at featherweight, and since he's made the move in weight classes, Hooker's been a completely different animal. But when you compare that to who Chan Sung Jung's fought, he fought Dennis Bermudez, who's a tough guy. I know Bermudez is on quite a heavy losing streak at the moment, but he's a tough guy for a return fight when you haven't been fighting for 4 years. Jose Aldo in the title fight before that was he was starting to come into that fight a lot more. Everyone knows that Aldo starts to fade towards the end of fights. Chan Sung Jung was coming back into that fight, but then he can't remember if he dislocated his shoulder. He popped his shoulder in one way or another, so he's literally fighting with one arm, and eventually succumbed to Aldo. But then before that, Dustin Poirier, Mark Hominick was a beast, and he beat him in 7 seconds. Leonard Garcia, these tough guys. But yeah, for me, this has been a really tough one to pick because of like the facts I've just mentioned. The Korean Zombie being out for so long prior to his last fight, and then blown out the knee. That's got to be taken into consideration. But for me, his current ability level and what we've seen from him before, and his strengths on the ground, I think will edge the fight. Now, it wouldn't surprise me again if we saw another classic Korean Zombie late submission, third, fourth round, gets the fight to the mat. He's hard to finish. He's durable, so will Rodriguez be able to knock him out in the first round, second round? I personally don't think so. So yeah, I'm taking the Korean Zombie in this one. I think he'll get a late submission, fourth round submission, and I think it'll be something crazy.
Yeah, I'm going the other way, and this is actually my free bet of this week as well. I've got 1.75 units on Yair Rodriguez at plus 125. I'm personally a little surprised that Yair is plus money and is an underdog in this fight. Now, he's not normally the type of it's not normally the type of bet that I would play myself, purely because of both fighters coming off layoffs, sizable layoffs, especially Korean Zombie. You know, he's fought once in 5 years, which is huge, by the way. 5 years is a very long time.
Yeah, it's a long time.
I don't even normally like going back more than 3 years when watching tape on a fighter, unless it's something really relevant or unless I have to. And in this case, I fucking did, because you know, he's fought once in 5 years, so it's a really, really long time. But let's just start from the stylistic point of view. You know, Yair Rodriguez is tall, he's rangy, he's long. He fights well at distance. He's got really powerful, accurate kicks as well, which you can throw from both legs in both stances, which benefits him a lot as well. Korean Zombie is a fighter that's obviously a lot shorter than Rodriguez. He's more of a pocket fighter as well when he's striking, so to land shots on Yair, he has got to be the one. He's going to be the one chasing. I do think he's going to be the aggressor, especially early on. But he is going to be the one that's putting more legwork in and putting more effort into actually landing something on Yair. Whereas Yair can just fight moving off the back foot, kicking and moving and angling and throwing his jab out. He'll do that fine, especially early on in the fight, if he needs to. But like I say, Korean Zombie is going to be the one putting in all that mileage, trying to actually get to Yair, get inside, start landing, maybe even try and clinch him and try and take him down. So I do feel that when it comes from a cardio perspective, I think Korean Zombie is going to be the one working harder, which is not going to fare well for him moving further down the line. The reason I say that is because, like I've mentioned a few times already tonight, this is at altitude, this is in Denver. Korean Zombie is obviously coming from Seoul in Korea, so again the altitude over there is nothing like Denver. And I know he's been over here early as well, so he has come over early to acclimatise to Denver. But I just, like I've said before, when they get in the cage, and this is 5 rounds, it's not a 3-round fight, it's a 5-round fight, and Yair Rodriguez trains in Albuquerque, as does Ray Borg, by the way. I missed that point earlier on. Obviously they both train at Jackson Wink, which is at altitude, so they're going to be used to that dry air and going hard in training every day. And when you look back at Yair's fight against Alex Caceres, it's crazy how hard he went from the first bell to the final bell. When I was watching it, you know, even the commentators were alluding to it as well. They were saying while that fight was on, you know, they couldn't believe how hard Yair's coming early on in the fight, in a 5-round fight, which I think was his first 5-round fight. How hard he was coming when he had, you know, another 20 minutes to fight in that particular fight. But by the time it got to the 5th round, he still hadn't slowed down too much. You know, he was still going hard. His cardio is insane. Now, for me, when you put in all this sort of stuff in perspective, you've got Korean Zombie that's fought once in 5 years. He's coming off an ACL injury, an MCL injury. He's fighting 5 rounds at altitude against a fighter that is going to be able to fight at range if he needs to. He is going to be smashing kicks to the knees and slowing him down. The fighter is going to be able to go 5 rounds no problem. His cardio is ridiculous. And I just feel that when you put in all this together, I really struggle to see Korean Zombie winning this fight. outside of maybe a really early first round knockout, if he can get inside and land something hard really early on, I just don't see how he's going to do it. The longer this fight goes on, the easier it's going to get for Yair. And, you know, you look at a few people I've heard mention talking about the Korean Zombie and Dennis Bermudez fight and how good and sharp he looked in that fight. And I thought the same as well. You know, before I jumped in to say, but what I remembered of Korean Zombie is being completely shocked when he came back after the military service and knocked Dennis Bermudez out. Who, yeah, he's been a bit chinny and stuff in the past, but he was still a good fighter at the time, and he's come out and knocked him out. And, you know, I rewatched that fight and it's not how I remembered it. You know, Korean Zombie got stunned 2, 3, maybe even 4 times before he ended up knocking Bermudez out. You know, Bermudez was landing on him. He was doing a good job. It's just unfortunate Bermudez ducked into an incoming uppercut from Korean Zombie, which knocked him out. You know, I'm not taking anything away from Korean Zombie. I just feel that the stylistic matchup, the fact that Korean Zombie's fought once in 5 years, multiple serious injuries, not light injuries, serious injuries, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later on. But I also feel as well that Yair didn't really want to fight Zabit. So at this point, it feels to me like Rodriguez is very conscious about who he fights, because he wants to get to a certain place. And I think him taking the fight with Korean Zombie, I think he knows in his head that this is a really good fight for him. Otherwise, he probably would have said, he probably would have turned around to the UFC and said, look, I've only just come back from injury like 5-6 weeks ago, not been training. He could have made up some bullshit like that and got out of this fight if he wanted to and booked himself a fight on a pay-per-view card, but he didn't. He took this fight with Korean Zombie, and I think that speaks volumes as well. Like I say, I'm really struggling to see how Korean Zombie wins this outside of a really early flash knockout. So I think the kicks are going to come to the knees. I think Zabit, I keep saying Zabit now. I don't think Yair is stupid. He's going to know. He's going to know about those injuries. I'm not sure if he knows what knee it is. I don't know if that's been publicised, but I think he's going to test both knees to see which one it is. And I think once he figures out which one it is, if he does, which I'd imagine he would, you know, I think he's going to really start hammering the legs. His leg kicks throw his opponents off balance anyway. So with the Korean Zombie coming in, I think the leg kicks will come sharp and fast and just really halt Zombie's game. And I just think he'll slow him down. He'll break him down. And I think sort of mid-fight, I think Yair's gonna knock him out, TKO. So, yeah, I've got Yair Rodriguez. Again, I reiterate, this is my free bet for this week. 1.75 units on Yair Rodriguez at plus 125. So, guys, that's all she wrote for the breakdowns. As we mentioned at the start of the podcast, John and I are going to be talking about our 3 key hot topics for UFC Denver. Welcome to the Hot Topics portion, guys. The first thing I'd like to kick this off with is surrounding the main event with the Korean Zombie and Yair Rodriguez, which we just spoke about. And it's mainly focusing on the Korean Zombie and how the serious injuries along with his lengthy layoff might affect him. So, you know, this was a topic that we both wanted to talk about a little bit, John, but I'll let you kick this one off. So, yeah, fire away. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, of course. We did cover it briefly then. In our breakdown of the fight itself, but as we mentioned, it's one of those things that you never really know how a fighter is going to look after such a serious injury, such as the one that the Korean Zombie he suffered. I mean, knee injuries are brutal in any walk of life, but I think it's especially prominent in sport like this. I mean, so much of every aspect of MMA involves strengthening your legs and your knees. I mean, there's so much pressure on your knees in everything, wrestling, striking, you're constantly moving. So what sort of effect does that have? And like you say, how much does it affect you when if you an athlete may think that they're fine, may think that it's fully healed and things like that, but how much does it affect you when somebody starts kicking away at that leg? Someone with brutal kick starts chopping away at a leg.
Take a look at what I mentioned earlier on with Raquel Pennington. You know, she was out,
course,
I think it was just over 6 months after breaking a leg, and that first leg kick from Amanda Nunes crippled her for the rest of the fight.
Yeah, for sure.
It's that serious, and it's another one of them things. I think leg kicks should be used more in MMA, because the second that I'm telling you now, right, when I've got a bet on a fighter, and it hasn't happened often, luckily, but when I've got a bet on a fighter and my fighter's leg starts crumbling, I know inside that bet's done. It's over, because you can't lead from that leg anymore. That reduces your accuracy of your punches. It reduces the power of your punches. It reduces movement. You're going to be a lot more static. You're going to be hittable. Like you've just said, it affects everything.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw it in the Tony Ferguson Anthony Pettis fight. I know that Pettis hit Ferguson with a couple of leg kicks, and although he only looked like it affected him temporarily, and it didn't affect him throughout the entirety of the fight, it did look for a couple of minutes in that first round as though Ferguson was hobbling a bit, and it was sort of to put pressure on his lead leg.
Ferguson did come back like 6 months earlier or something. That was
crazy. I mean, he recovered from a serious ACL injury in about 3 weeks. It was mental, but yeah. So that is something that you always have to take into consideration. And I'm with you in the fact that I think leg kicks are underutilized in MMA. People seem to be able to take the regular, I call it the regular leg kick, to the chop to like the thigh, the upper portion of the leg, a lot better than they used to. I mean, if you go back a few years and watch the Aldo against Uriah Faber fight, that was ridiculous. I mean, Faber literally couldn't stand up. His leg had taken that much of a hammering. But now we're seeing people utilising those low leg kicks. And I sometimes think to myself while I'm watching fights, why do more fighters not utilise those? Because you see after, especially those low calf kicks, after 3 or 4 heavy calf kicks like that, people are like limping and they're struggling. They don't want to put pressure down on their front foot, their lead leg.
And then they're concentrating too much on that leg. Yeah, they're not thinking about the fight as a whole.
You only seem to see it though in like 1 in every 10 fights. I always think to myself, why is everyone not using these kicks?
Yeah, I agree.
As soon as you see someone do it, why are you not in the gym the very next day going, oh, this happened at the weekend and he just completely chopped his leg down. Can we work on some of these kicks, please? But yeah,
something else to mention as well, and I saved it specifically for this portion rather than the breakdowns, is before I laid the money down on Yair a couple of days ago, I got in touch with a guy called Jamie Carruthers, that's one of the brains behind Concussion Pro 1. A guy that's it's been his passion since, sports science and the body and things like that have been a passion since he's been about 12 years old.
Yeah.
I spoke to him about about ACL and MCL injuries. I didn't tell him specifically why I was asking in regards to Yair. But I just wanted to know his thoughts on sort of the recovery time and does it ever fully recover? And basically what he said is he replied with it's a serious injury. He said you're looking at about 6 months to recover. I can't remember which one it is, ACL or MCL. One's a lot worse than the other. Can't remember which one it is, but the longest one takes 6 months to recover. Now Korean Zombie's been out about a year, I think. So he's recovered
long, about 18 months, isn't it? I think, if I remember right there. I think
either way, his recovery time has been long enough. It's been at least double. But the one thing that Jamie said to me is, you will never 100% heal. That knee will never be at 100% again. So, I mean, again, that for me just added to what I wanted to know in regards to putting money down on the bet, because I still stand by what I said in the breakdown. I think it's going to be a lot. We're asking a lot of Korean Zombie at 31 years old at this at featherweight. Yeah, he is at featherweight. So, 31 years old at featherweight, who's fought once in 5 years, coming off an ACL and MCL injuries, fighting a 5-round fight in altitude against, in my opinion, a style in Yair that isn't favourable. I mean,
Yeah.
if they were both healthy and they both had a full camp, neither had any injuries, I think it would be a bit of a closer fight. I think it'd be a lot of a closer fight. 3 rounds in somewhere random in America, but I just feel that there's a lot of stuff stacking against Korean Zombie here, and a lot of it falls down to this injury. I just don't think, like I've just said, I think the right words are, we're asking a lot of him to go out there and beat a 26-year-old that's not even entered his prime yet and is already excelling. Yes, he had that bad performance against Frankie Edgar, but listen, Frankie Edgar would have demolished Korean Zombie. You know, that's one reason why I was sort of happy that Yair stepped in instead of Edgar, because the main event would have been a one-way fight, in my opinion. And especially like we've just mentioned with a knee, stopping takedowns, defending takedowns, Frankie Edgar would have done exactly what he did to Yair Rodriguez against Zombie. He'd have probably got him out of there quicker. But yeah, it's no shame to lose. You know, Yair took a serious vet lesson against Frankie Edgar. Like I say, I just think it's tough. It's tough to ask Korean Zombie to come out here and really win this fight. And if he does, I'll be impressed. I won't be shocked. He's a great fighter. I love the Korean Zombie, so I won't be shocked. But I'll be very, very impressed if he can go out there and do that. I mean, I was impressed against Benavidez, but I will be extremely impressed if he takes Yair out.
Yeah, for sure.
So have you got anything else that you wanna add surrounding the layoff, the knee?
Yeah, I mean, we've covered it all really. I mean, it's one of those. I know you said that it never fully heals, but it's just the unknown. I think is the thing that worries me, and the thing that worries me about any fighter that comes back. 'Cause I mean, like I said, I did give a couple of examples in the breakdown of fighters who have come back from serious knee injuries, and they've looked okay, and they've not, touch wood, suffered any repercussions. But for everyone, I'd say that they've come back fine. There's, I'm sure, possibly 1 or 2 or 3 that have come back and not looked the same from a serious knee injury. So I think it's just the unknown of how much is that going to affect them, and again, stylistically, who you come up against on that return. And like we say, Rodriguez, Willie look, he's got a very strong kicking game, so will he look to utilise that straight away and target the injury? Again, we don't know. I'd expect so, yes. So it's just that unknown, and I assume fighters would, and any athlete in any sports could think. We see it so often in football over here in the UK. Fighter suffers a footballer suffers a knee injury. They're out for their 12 months, rehabilitating, etc. Think that they're back up to speed and everything's fine, and then all of a sudden the exact same injury occurs again, you get the injury, they have the layoff, and they just never look the same, you know. Yeah, because it affects other areas of your body as well. I mean, sometimes just subconsciously, without you thinking, people make adjustments with their physically, with their body, with their movements, with the way they move, and a lot of the time they don't even realise. And this does happen a lot of time with footballers. They may do something to their knee, and subconsciously they're not even thinking about doing this, but they may change the way they run, their running technique slightly, and they suffer from other injuries, hamstring injuries, and a lot of hip injuries and things like that, just because of the effect that serious knee injuries had on the body, and your body has to adjust, and obviously it tries to accommodate this injury and make movement a lot more comfortable for you, and sometimes that does subconsciously mean that you move in a different way. Whether that transitions over to mixed martial arts, I would imagine so, because it's there's like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things involve. A lot of the movements involved in MMA involve pushing off from the legs, spring in those steps, pretty much all aspects of it.
To attack, it's moving back to defend, it's evading, shooting in for takedowns, defending takedowns. You know, it's a brutal sport, MMA, and you know, anybody that's ever trained in it will tell you that it just takes everything out of you. But your knees are a pivotal part of
Definitely.
everything that you do in MMA, and that's why the leg kicks are so effective. Because when a fighter's knee goes, that's it.
Yeah,
That
definitely.
is it. It's the beginning of the end for him. So, yeah.
Going just quickly covering on that the leg kicks. I competed a couple of times previously, just amateur bouts, and the first one that I competed in, there's like shin guards and stuff, and the guy I was fighting against caught me with a couple of leg kicks, just like to the top of the thigh. And at the time, obviously with the adrenaline and things, you don't think much of it. But then as soon as it was the end of the first round, we came out for the second round. Immediately, like when I stepped off, and obviously I'm a pathetic nobody amateur in comparison to the world class fighters are today. So I can't imagine how much it does affect them. And afterwards, just literally as soon as the fight had finished, which I lost, I may add, as soon as we stepped out of the cage and I started walking back to the locker room to get changed, I literally could barely walk, and I only took probably three leg kicks throughout the fight, and I could barely walk. So I mean, imagine a professional guy with the strength that Rodriguez has, chopping away a leg that you've had just recovered from a serious knee injury. It doesn't bear thinking about.
Well, it's funny, just me, just sort of slightly off topic, is me and one of my mates when I was at university, we used to play, you do stupid shit after you've had a few drinks and stuff like that. We used to play a game of leg kicks where we'd take it in turns, and no shin guards or anything, just raw shin to the top of the thigh, and whoever quits first loses. And it was brutal. Some of them, when you're taking like 3, 4, or 5, and you wake up in the morning and you can barely move your legs. So yeah, it's brutal, man. But yeah, with Korean Zombie, like I say, I think he's got a tough task ahead of him. I'm not saying he can't win, but if he does, I'll be very impressed. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is Dana White's Contender Series. So I've read and heard multiple people over the last few weeks mention that they don't put too much stock into fighters coming into the UFC after wins on Dana's show, and that's their opinion, and it's cool, but I disagree, and I really disagree, and I wanted to give my take on it, especially because we've got a lot of fighters on this card in Denver who have come off the Contender Series. Yeah. So we've got fighters such as Joby Sanchez, we've got Julian Erosa, Devonte Smith, Thiago Moises, Bobby Moffett. I'm probably missing a few, but you can tell where I'm going with it.
Yeah,
we've got a lot of fighters.
Maycee Barber as well.
Yeah, Maycee Barber's another one. And I just disagree with it, because I think that the fighters that actually get through to the UFC are talents. Most of them are talents, and most of them have done really well. There's some that have done better than others, but as a whole, I just think that, and I've got a little list here, I think there's 14, 15 fighters here that I'm going to reel off in a minute, and I just want you, to each one that I reel off, I just want you to put into perspective sort of who they are, what they've done, and more importantly, the fact that you fucking know who they are, and sort of the trajectory and how they've performed. Just to, like I say, it'll just put into perspective like how good the talent coming in from the Contender Series actually is. And I just don't think it's a waste of talent. I don't think it's fighters that you should be discarding, because they're really good dudes. So we've got a huge prospect in Sean O'Malley. So everyone knows Sean O'Malley. He was a Dana White Contender Series fighter. You've got Jeff Neal, who, in my opinion, is, again, another tough prospect, just absolutely brutalised Frank Camacho, something we've not seen any fighter do. Ricky Simone, Greg Hardy, and I know Greg Hardy's controversial, and he's got a past and a background, and, that's not good at all. I'm just looking purely.
He's a beast, though.
I'm looking purely from a fighter and a skill set point of view, rather than the personality and the history of that guy as well. So Greg Hardy, Carl Roberson, Montel Jackson, Julio Arce, Kevin Holland, Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Now I know his decision got overturned. I think it was marijuana metabolites. After the fight, it's just bullshit how they've overturned that. Matt Favola, Ryan Spann, Antonia Shevchenko, the sister of Valentina, Charles Bird, Kurt Holliber. All those names I've just reeled off there.
All dangerous guys.
Yeah, they're all fun to watch.
Yeah.
You tell me one guy in that list, John, that you don't like to see fight.
There isn't any.
Exactly. They're either really good, they're either really special prospects, or they might not be. They might not have a high ceiling, but they're just fucking great to watch.
Yeah, that's what I like about the Contender Series format and how they work it. I mean, they want how it differs to Tough. Obviously, Tough is like a tournament style, and you do get fights in Tough where you've got, not saying that fighters should just fight to entertain us fans. Of course, not the ultimate goal for most fighters is to win a world title and to do that in the best and easiest way possible that suits their skill set. But you do see guys in the Ultimate Fighter who will just take their opponent down and hold them down for the 2 rounds and work their way through the tournament and then eventually win it. But with the Contender Series, it's all about getting that finish. If you don't get a finish, you're not going to get signed to the UFC. We've seen lots of guys who get impressive wins, impressive finishes, and they don't get signed. So these guys that do get signed, I think the scouting of them is pretty good as well by the UFC. I mean, they pick guys who they know are going to be excited and who like you pretty much summed it up there. They're either serious talents that can affect the top of the divisions, or they just pick the guys who have got talent, they've got the ability to win, but are also really, really exciting fighters. One guy that I'll just briefly touch on that was on Dana White's Contender Series that didn't get signed was a guy called Alex Gilpin, featherweight, and he was actually fighting on the ACB 87 card that me and you both covered.
Yeah, I remember Alex.
He got the win there, guillotine choke, 3rd round guillotine. I actually interviewed him after the fight, and he said that he wanted to make it to the UFC next. And then I spoke to him after the announcement of that he'd be on Dana White's Contender Series, and he said he was disappointed not to just make it to the UFC proper, but he was happy to go on the show and show the world what he's about. And he got a win as well. He got a fantastic come from behind Darce choke in the 2nd round of his fight. He's that takes him to, I think he's about 12-1 in his career. Yeah, 12-1 as a professional now. And he's an absolute beast. This guy's a beast. If you watch his fights, I mean, pretty much
he was pretty much the only finish at ACB Nottingham.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I think 7 of his last 8 fights as well. He's got finishes.
This is the beautiful thing about the Contender Series, though, because even though he's won and he's not got the guaranteed contract, if the UFC ever need a step in, they will be contacting those people, and it's happened a few times. Like a lot of these Contender Series fighters, even if they don't get a contract, are staying ready and staying in shape because that call can come at any time, and that's their cue into the UFC. Because what normally happens is when a fighter comes in on short notice into the UFC, win or lose, well, forget about win. If they lose coming in on short notice, the chances are the UFC will give them at least one more after.
Yeah,
because they've saved the UFC a fight. They've come in on short notice. UFC's appreciate that it might not be the best scenario for them to win. And I think in that respect, the UFC does a really good job because they could almost use fighters and really piss fighters off by making them come in on short notice, the fighter losing on short notice, and then just never getting that opportunity again. And that would just be a bad way to manage that situation. But the UFC have never done that. In all my time watching the UFC, I've never seen a fighter come in on short notice, lose the fight, and then never get another opportunity. I'm not saying the fighter hasn't been out there, and it might have happened maybe 1 or 2 times, especially if the fighter is very, very poor. But right now I can't tell you a name. So this is the great thing about Contender Series, and I think it's ultimately gonna slowly take over Tough. Tough's been great, people talk bad stuff about Tough as well, but
Tough is I've really enjoyed Tough over the years.
Tough has given us some of the best champions that the UFC's ever seen, so it's like, you can't say a bad word about Tough, but eventually something is going to replace it, just like anything in life. Something runs its course and something else comes in its place, and I think that could be the Contender Series. They can put on enough fights to get enough talent through, and like I said, that list I've just reeled off there is listed 14, 15 really great fighters. They do the Contender Series twice a year, and they're getting sort of maybe 30 fighters a year from the Contender Series, that's instantly double, maybe triple what they'd get from one tough per year, you know. So
Yeah, of course.
For sure, I think it's great, and I'm just not sure how people can not put any stock into the fighters that are coming
Yeah,
through the
definitely.
ranks.
Yeah.
So finally, we'll discuss the potential fights that could earn the fight of the night bonus. So this was one that you really wanted to talk about, so I'd imagine that you've got a couple of fights in mind. So what are you thinking, fight of the night? And fuck it, we might as well just talk about performance of the night as well. So who have you got getting the bonuses?
Yeah, there's a few fights here that excite me, that look like they could be really interesting fights. I think first and foremost, you can't look past the top two fights on the card. Korean Zombie against Rodriguez. I think that could be crazy. I think it could go quite deep into the rounds as well. I think that'll be a war. Neither of them know how to back down, or neither of them are tentative. So you pretty much know what you're going to get with those two, and it's going to be a pretty much all-out war. Again, Donald Cerrone and Mike Perry. I know we spoke about Mike Perry. Has he? Don't want to use the word calm down a bit since he's been fighting at training at Jackson Wink, but we still know that he's got that crazy fire in his belly, and again, Cerrone's not one to back down or hesitate in exchanging. So immediately, I'm looking at those two fights as potential fights tonight. If you look further down the card, I mean, the opening fight of the card, Mark De La Rosa against Joby Sanchez, is going to be an exciting fight. I'm really looking forward to that fight. I agree,
but I always struggle picking the fights lower down in the card for sort of your performance of the night bonuses.
They very rarely do, don't they?
The
UFC never picks them, yeah.
Yeah, they tend to favour like sort of late prelims, you know, and then into the main card. So
yeah, I do feel sorry for some of those guys, because sometimes they do put on some really good fights at the start of the card. But yeah, like you say,
to win it, they have to put on like
one hell of
ridiculously good performance. Yeah, like for example,
fight of the year contender fight.
Lucy Pudlova and Irina Aldana. Like,
yeah, that was
for
crazy.
me, that fight was probably the fight of the year. You know.
Yeah, that was nuts. With regards to performance of the night, I think our new guy, Thiago Moises, I think he could potentially get some kind of performance, a brutal finish over for Dariush, possibly. Also, maybe Luis Peña, Violent Bob Ross. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got some good crisp striking, brutal striking, and he's got decent submissions as well. And then again, the main event stands out. I would be quite surprised if it went the full 5 rounds. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these two guys puts the other one away. And like you mentioned, the UFC does tend to. I have noticed quite a pattern of, if someone puts their opponent away in the main event, more often than not, they do seem to pick up a performance of the night bonus as well. So those three stand out to me as potential performance of the night bonus as well.
Well, for me, I think the fight of the night, I'm probably going to make the prediction of that being Benavidez and Borg. I feel like it's going to be a really fast-paced fight, and one that's really, really easy on the eye. I think both guys will trade in the pocket. I think we'll see a lot of quick, crisp shots. And then when it comes to the grappling and stuff like that, I think it will come to the grappling. I think both of them at some point will try and engage. And I think that we're going to see a lot of crazy scrambles, a lot of movement on the mat, some quick advances, some reversals and stuff like that. So I just think we're going to see a really, really entertaining fight, one that's really, really easy on the eye. Now, I would go for the main event being the potential fight of the night, but I genuinely think it's going to be one-sided. I know it sounds like I'm really writing Korean Zombie off. I'm not, as a fighter and a skill set. It's just, for the reasons that I've mentioned already, I just think he's going to have a tough time in there for everything surrounding the fight. And I just see Yair methodically breaking him down slowly through the fight until he gets the finish. which leads me on to one of my potential performance of the nights, which I think Yair Rodriguez, if he does do that, will get a performance of the night for sure. Then you're looking at a second performance of the night. Now, I'm looking at either one or two. So I agree with you, Thiago Moises. I think if he wins, he probably knocks Dariush out cold. And if he does, I think he'll get that performance of the night. The other one potentially is Cerrone and Perry. So either one of them. Obviously, we've both picked Cerrone. Yeah. There's a chance Perry knocks Cerrone out. I think if Perry knocks him out, I think Perry will get that performance. And I think if Cerrone submits Perry or knocks him out, I don't see him knocking him out. But if he submits him, I think Cerrone might get the performance of the night for that. Because of the animosity between them, I see the UFC really picking one of them if they get a finish. And it's a nice finish and a dominant performance. Like, for example, if Cerrone's getting absolutely smashed up but hangs in there and then suddenly pulls off an armbar on the bottom or something.
Yeah.
Don't know whether he'll get that performance of the night. Yeah, it would be a great, crazy finish, but a performance of the night is a solid performance. That wouldn't be solid. So, yeah, just my predictions going off that then. Joe Benavidez and Ray Borg for fight of the night. I think Yair Rodriguez and Thiago Moises will get the performance of the night. So that's mine, and that's the hot topics portion, guys. So that's the lot for this week's podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed the new format and would really like to hear your opinions in the comments as well. So if you like the podcast, please hit the like button and subscribe. We've got so much content coming up in the run up to Christmas as well, so don't miss out on that. We absolutely appreciate that this podcast has also been really long. You know, you'll be able to pick and choose what sort of breakdowns you want, unless you want them all. And you know, if you want them all in the entire podcast, then I hope we've killed a quarter of your day at work. For the bets this week at UFC Denver, don't forget to check out the premium bets from Newsome MMA and the membership options available too. Never hesitate to contact me if you've got any questions or inquiries. So, John, before we hit the Newsome MMA 2-minute plug, what do you need to mention, man?
Yeah, as always, check me out on Fight Post, Fight Post MMA on Facebook or www.fightpost.co.uk. I'm always releasing content on there, whether it be my breakdowns, predictions of fights, interviews with some of the fighters. I mean, over the last week or so, I've had some great guys on there. Ross Houston, the new Cage Warriors welterweight champion. Tom Breeze ahead of his fight next weekend in Argentina, or possibly the weekend after. I'm getting my dates mixed up, but yeah, Tom Breeze, and also Cage Warriors lightweight champion Soren Bak. I've had those three out in the last week or so check them out. And also, if you're an MMA fan or you just want to talk anything MMA, hit me up on Twitter at MMA and me. I'm always down to talk to anyone else who's interested in MMA and talk some fights. So that's it from me.
Cool. So now for the quick Newsome MMA 2-minute plug. First of all, I'd like to talk about Concussion Pro 1, who are partnering Newsome MMA. Concussion Pro 1 is the world's first dedicated concussion supplement supporting brain health and performance. The product is honestly groundbreaking. There isn't another supplement like it on the market either. The unique formula that makes up Concussion Pro 1 has been developed and created by some of the world's most decorated sports scientists to help protect and support the brain and its performance. Approved by the UK Mixed Martial Arts Federation, Concussion Pro 1 provides some amazing support to the brain. It increases mental performance, faster recovery from injury, reduced inflammation post-impact, improved neural protection and much more. With professional athletes such as Alexander Rakic, Mark Diakese, Scott Askham using Concussion Pro 1, you can also see how vital this product is not only for MMA but for all combat sports. To find out more information, you can click on any of the banners on the Newsome MMA website or go to concussionpro1.com. Secondly, please check out our sponsors of Newsome MMA, which is CBD Life UK. I'm a great case study for CBD in the MMA gambling world. People often talk about sweats and nerves as they're watching the fight that they've bet on fight. These feelings are absolutely real, and because of this, I vape CBD to help calm me and relax me on fight night. And if I'm honest, I didn't think it would make too much of a difference, but it really does, and I would honestly recommend it to anybody, especially you MMA gamblers. You can access the offers from my sponsorship by clicking any of the banners on the Newsome MMA website, and you can also get 15% off your first order by using promo code Newsome MMA. So that's it from us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night. Thank you and goodbye.
Enjoy, guys. Thank you.